Okay, look, so, like, before we begin...
Yeah.
Can we all just kind of acknowledge the elephant in the room? That nobody can see. That isn't doing anything.
That we have a bottle of Aunt Jemima sitting in the middle of the table?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I was gonna... That's what I was going for.
Yeah.
Welcome! It's the first episode of the Faith Blind Council podcast, right?
Woo! Faith Blind Council.
Was that the name that we... Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, it's been so fucking long.
Yeah.
It's alright, we're here.
So, okay, we had wanted to record this ages ago, but due to issues with sound and whatnot, we haven't been able to. So this is our official first fucking episode, and it should go without any hitches.
Don't say any... You fuck!
No.
Right.
I'm going to say what I'm going to say, and there are going to be no hitches, and it'll go great, and hell yeah. Well, except my internet's being really slow, but that is for another time.
That's par for the course, really.
Yep, we're good.
It is what it is. So this is our first episode.
Yes.
I would say.
Yes.
Is a good way.
Our first episode, and the first one that all of you will hear, because the other ones were travesties, and if any of you heard them, I would probably drink bleach.
We'll release those as a holiday special.
Would you not do that anyway? That's my question.
Yeah.
You're in a place in your life like, oh, I don't want to drink bleach. I have a sincere desire to live. My name's Frater Yara.
How you tell me bleach ain't food?
So, yeah, let's just go for it. Why not? We got some beer.
Yep.
Got some microphones.
Yep.
There's some cats running around here.
Yeah, ruining everything.
Fucking dicks.
Get out of here. Okay.
Alright, so let's just start it off. Tell me about yourself. That was really creepy, but we're keeping it.
Tell me.
Tell me a story.
Tell me your secrets. Okay, so Frater Yara Marud. You can just call me Yara, because it's quicker and most people can't remember the full name, and that's fine, whatever. But yeah, so Yara, and I've been a practicing chaos magician for about 20 years now. So, I'm going to kind of try and be voice of experience here, but that's gonna amount to absolutely jack shit because of the nature of chaos magic and everyone here, so...
You know, in retrospect, we probably should have started off by saying this was a Chaos Magic podcast.
For anyone still listening, this is a Chaos Magic podcast.
Yep. Magic. It's magic.
Chaos Magic.
It's Chaos Magic.
Chaos Magic.
You're never too rich to enjoy a free turkey dog. Anyways, I'm Frater Dreadnought. That's a lot easier to remember than Yara Marud.
Yep.
That's me.
Yeah, he just named himself after comic book characters.
That's not true. That's not a comic book character. It's a ship type.
Okay.
Anyways.
Nerd. You fucking nerd.
Well, yeah, that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
Literally 100%. Anyways, I've been doing Chaos Magic for like 6 years-ish, on and off, and doing things and not doing things. It's a whole goddamn thing, is what I'm trying to get to here. But yeah, I've been doing this for a little while, not nearly as long as Yara. But, you know, we have things we do similarly, things we do differently, and it'll offer kind of some different viewpoints and ways of looking at shit, which should be fun.
Yep, and I'm Dylan. I've been practicing Chaos Magic for or is it Magic? I'm still learning.
I'm a Chaos
I've been doing
magician.
this for 3 months, or months. And I'm pretty much the...
I don't like that.
Yeah,
Months.
it's pretty nice.
Don't like that.
Well, we can always edit that out.
Nope.
All right,
it.
well,
We're also
everyone...
not editing you saying et.
Oh, God, boy. Oh, boy, this is going to be a fun one.
What happened to the fortune cookies? I already done ate them.
Yeah, they're all gone, eating good.
Yep.
So here we are.
So there's my introduction.
Yeah, so you've basically been practicing as long as we've been,
recording these.
Yeah, recording these and attempting and failing to put something up.
In theory.
Yeah. In theory, I haven't been sitting in bed masturbating all day. But in theory, I've been practicing a lot.
Well, I mean, all chaos magic is just beaten off to squiggles on a piece of paper.
Yeah, so honestly, for the past 3 months, I've been doing pretty good.
Honestly, the only difference between chaos magic and just beaten off is recording the results.
Yeah.
I should have been doing that.
It's the intent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just
and not getting it in your eye.
Well, or,
Or getting it in your eye.
Sometimes you make mistakes.
Yeah.
just record the...
Just ask my parents.
Hey!
Ooh. Hey!
Got him!
Okay.
Alright, so
So the first episode, what we're going to do is we're going to cover definitions, because we don't want to keep doing this like ages down the road, just being like, okay, well, I know we've defined this before, probably, hopefully, so here's the definition again. Instead, you can just come back to this episode or to the show notes so that you don't have to listen to us ramble forever in order to get to the definition you want, but this way, having a first episode will have all of the definitions in the bag.
Yeah, it's like a syllabus.
Yeah.
But with more booze.
Yep, more booze and whatnot.
And less, less structure.
Yeah.
Really.
Gotta love those syllabuses.
Syllabuses
for magic.
Magic.
I practice magic.
Only with my pinky out.
Okay, so on that note, what is magic?
What is magic? What is magic?
What is magic?
I want to start with you over here, bud. What is magic to you?
To me, is beating off in my bed for 3 months. But after that, it gets really into a more personal thing, like how I feel afterwards, or before. It's a magical experience.
Is it just unending shame?
No. Who needs shame?
Lots of people.
Lots of people need shame.
Obviously.
You for one.
Oh, guys. You're gonna do me like this.
Hey, you're the one who admitted to it, Doug.
Well, that's alright.
Yep.
So to you, it's just beating off. That's all it is.
It's about, if we're going to be serious for a second.
We are going to be serious for
okay, so the whole idea of it is me being a better person and using this as a crutch to become a better person instead of, sitting in bed and whacking off all day.
Yeah, that's fair. So, okay, if we want to take Crowley and his definition of magic from his book, magic is the science and art of causing change to occur in conformity with will. We've also got Arch Trader Blue Flake from Psychonaut's Field Manual.
I thought it was Blue Fluke.
Blue Fluke, yeah, that's right, it's Blue Fluke. But he describes it as magic is the hacking of one's own mind.
Which that'll fit more into different models as we talk about models later on in the episode.
What was his name?
Arch Trader Blue Fluke.
Blue Fluke?
Yes.
Yeah.
His idea is hacking your brain, so in essence, you're only using so much until you figure out this way to actually start using more?
No.
It's kind of like, we'll get more into it when it comes to magical models, but it's basically a way of using your mind in order to work for your benefit.
Okay. I think I can follow that.
Yeah. So, personally, I kind of go with the Blue Fluke thing, because personally I stick with a particular form of magical models, and mine is my kind of definition of magic is using your mind in order to change your reality to best suit your needs, I guess.
Okay, I think that's pretty fair. My definition is kind of like an in-between. I would define magic as not only changing reality to conform with your will, but aligning your will with reality around you. And that gets into a lot of more kind of complicated shit, especially been working a lot with the Kabbalah lately.
Yeah.
Of understanding that everything is everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, the difference between nothing and everything is nothing. We can get into that.
Yeah,
a whole lot of beers down the road.
Yeah.
But that's kind of my interpretation of it, is that not only are you changing reality around you, but through changing reality around you, you're changing yourself.
Yeah.
As well. So that pretty much knocks out magic. In the end, I think that magic is really just what you want it to be.
That's fair. Yeah.
If you want it to be, I found, $20, then that's magic.
Right. And that's one thing, particularly with chaos magic, that you'll find as opposed to dealing with other other practitioners of different models or paradigms or whatever, you'll have your own definition of what magic is, as opposed to some hard-lined definition that cannot be strayed from. With chaos magic, it's whatever the fuck you want it to be, and that's what makes it beautiful, because we stick to what works, and if it works for me, awesome. That's what magic is to me. If it doesn't work for you, then that's not the definition. Find your own definition. Find your own whatever.
Exactly. It's the old adage, if you went to someone who practices Wicca, had them do a ritual for you, and you went to a chaos magician, had them do the same ritual for you, with the same intended result, and neither of them worked, the person who practices Wicca might tell you that the gods didn't will it to be.
Yeah. Or it wasn't the will of the goddess.
It wasn't fated to happen.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
But if you come to me, I'll just tell you, well, fuck, I fucked up. We'll do it again. We'll change it and make it work this time.
Yeah, what can we change?
Owning up to the mistakes.
In a way, it's much more, it follows the scientific process.
Yeah,
much more.
More of the scientific method. Like, you'll have a hypothesis. What can I do to affect this change in my world? Okay, well, these are the steps I'm going to take. After doing that, I write all of the things down and then record my results. Well, these are my results based on what I did. Well, they didn't work this time. What can I change to make it so that it works?
And that's, I think, one of the core tenets of chaos magic specifically is iteration. Like, iteration is key for everything.
Yeah.
The more you iterate on something, the more you repeat the process and do it again, you're going to find different ways of doing things, better ways of doing things. Things that used to work for you really well might not work for you so much anymore. And you'll come up with this whole, like, you'll have books, like notebooks of just crazy person scribbles that, are different ways of achieving the same result.
So in a sense, entire life learning. It's like you're never going to be perfect at it, because is there a perfection to chaos magic?
Well, what's perfect?
Yeah. What works for you?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, if your goal in life is to just, eat dirty pickles out of a dumpster and live behind the Denny's, but if you are living up to that dream, then you know what? It works for you, and you get to eat all of the dirty pickles out of the dumpster you want and hang out with Rebecca behind the Denny's and spend all of your life doing that.
Okay, first of all, I'd appreciate it if you wouldn't name drop my wife.
You're not kidding anyone. You don't have anyone who loves you.
You didn't say she had to love me.
Just that there was a wife.
She's just there for the pickles, Doug. We're all there for the pickles.
Fucking dirty dumpster pickles.
Goddamn right. All right, let's just get going.
Okay, so we've already mentioned it. We might as well get into magical models.
Do you want to do that right now?
Yeah, fuck it.
Yeah, fuck it.
We'll get over it. We've mentioned it a couple times.
Yeah,
so magical model is how you approach magic. Like, how magic works for your paradigm, for your structure, the structure you follow.
I would say it's more archetypes. And it's ways to categorize what you're doing. There are 5 magical models.
Yes.
2 of them, the first 2 that we're going to discuss are considered older magical models. The second 2 we're going to discuss will be newer magical models. And then the last one is just kind of there.
An amalgamation, really.
Yeah. So Old Testament, New Testament sort of deal?
Not really.
No, we're not. We're not talking about biblical fanfic.
Dude, we should write some though.
No.
Dude, I want to write about the burning bush. That's what I would, if I had a fucking brothel in Sodom or Gomorrah, I would have named it the burning bush.
That's what I call Rebecca.
Hey! Alright, so let's just go.
Okay,
The
first magical model is the spirit model, which, the spirit model is pretty easy. So my background of study is anthropology and English and all of that, and with comparative religion, you learn that one of the earliest forms of religion is what's called animism, or the spirit model, which is basically everything has a spirit, everything is animated, and anything you want done, you have to appease the spirits. So, like, rivers have spirits, and trees have spirits, and rocks have spirits, and so in order to work with anything, you have to talk to them and make them cool.
Sounds like my Japanese animes.
Yep. You fucking nerd.
Oh, yeah.
Pretty much. So the idea with that is where you get like shamanism from. And the idea in animism is that the magician is able to coerce these spirits or deal with these spirits or talk to these spirits, communicate with them to get the spirits to act in accordance with the magician's will.
Yep. Very much so.
And it's pretty much what it boils down to.
Yeah.
It doesn't take a lot of like dissecting. There's layers you can go into it.
Yeah, well, I'm sure there's a bunch of layers.
But
it's pretty straightforward.
That's
honestly.
the very simple gist of how animism works.
And energy model, which is the next one, is very similar to that in that the world and existence and the universe is all an amalgamation of energies, and the magician is able to bend these energies or work with these energies in order to manipulate reality. So everything has an energy. That's where, like, the phrase, "I'm sending you good vibes, man."
Yeah.
You have energy, and you're sending energy to that person in order to lift them or cause harm. Like, man, this place gives me some bad vibes. I'm getting some bad energy from this place. Like, that's the energy model.
And that also, it kind of informs the information model, which we'll get to in a second.
So those were the two older archetypes?
Yeah. Those
energy and spirit?
And those have been around for thousands of years.
Yeah.
Before recorded history, they've been around basically forever.
Right, and you get those in old, like, folklore and shit like that, where, you know, the tribe stayed away from this area because it gave off bad feelings, and that's where the land of the dead was, and so we just avoided that place because it made you feel bad.
Yeah. Don't go to the child molester's house on the end of the block because there's bad energy there that will lead to you being molested.
Yeah. Okay, so those two archetypes are pretty straightforward then.
Yep. So the next one is the psychological model, which is primarily what I work within. Which the psychological model is the belief that the subconscious, and by manipulating your own subconscious, you are able to work with reality. So the thing that I always stick with, like with magic, you can bend reality, but you can't break it. So if I create a spell or a sigil that I want to learn how to fly, or I want to fly, at no point am I going to burst wings and start flying, because that would break reality. However, you can bend it. So after a successful working would make it so that the next thing I know, I'm on a plane flying somewhere across the country, or I have a dream the next night in which I'm flying. So your subconscious is working through that. You change your subconscious so that way you enact that will. You enact that intention.
So that archetype's mostly just your own perception of everything around you?
Not necessarily. It very much has to do with understanding different realities, which is something we'll get into in a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
And understanding that everything, in order for magic to work, it needs to have a means of manifestation. To go back to the flying example, it is physically impossible for you in this realm to sprout wings out of your back and fly. But there are means of manifestation. Buy a plane ticket. Take flight lessons.
Go parasailing.
Buy a fucking flight simulator for your computer. Have a lucid dream where you're flying. Those are means of manifestation. And that's what that gets into more so than how the psychological model works. Mm-hmm. The thing about the psychological model, to me, is you are basically tricking your brain. It's the same way like when you're trying to work out a problem or you're stressed out by something, a lot of times you'll find yourself just consciously avoiding it by doing some inane task.
Yeah, just distracting yourself at that point.
Going through multiplication tables or doing Sudoku or playing video games or whatever the fuck it is. And then to you, it seems like all of a sudden you just come up with this solution to whatever it is you were doing. That's psychological model. That's tricking your brain.
And that goes back to the definition of magic from Blue Fluke, where you are hacking your brain. You are tricking your brain into doing something. And part of the reason why I'm so gung-ho about the psychological model is, if you look at sciences, I've always been under the belief that magic has always been 2 steps ahead of science. So, you have, going back into history, alchemy predates chemistry. You had people working with alchemy that became chemistry. You had folk medicine, like drinking from a pond, or drinking from a stream that magically heals all of your aches and pains, only to 200 years later realizing that why that is because the roots of a willow tree stretch into that water and is leaking aspirin, essentially, into that water, which is causing you to no longer feel pain. And with psychology is a very, very young science, stretching back only maybe 200 years.
I don't appreciate the pun, sir. A very young science, real mature guy.
Yeah. Terrible. But it's a very young science, and so with that, we're still figuring out how the brain works. We still have no idea what consciousness even is. We don't understand how anesthesia works. All we know is that you breathe in ether, and all of a sudden you stop experiencing things.
We don't even know why we sleep.
We just, with all of our study of what sleep is, we have come to the definite conclusion that we sleep because we are sleepy. That's it.
That's as far as we've gotten?
Yes,
scientifically,
that is as far as we have gotten. So we have a very, very immature, naive understanding of how the brain even works. And so, like, I stick with the psychological model because it makes the most sense to me. How we are able to manipulate the subconscious and manipulate that thing that is pushing us forward. And that's what's able to manipulate our reality around us. But again, I could be entirely wrong. And the energy model could be entirely wrong. The spirit model could be entirely wrong. But frankly, I'm working with what works for me.
Yeah. It could be that what the truth is, you can't see the giant air quotes I'm doing at the microphone right now.
Oh yeah, they're huge.
But what the truth is something we haven't even discovered yet. Like, as a species, we don't know what it is. So who fucking knows? Really. You go with what works. And that kind of brings us into the 4th model.
Which is the information model, which information model is everything without mass or information which has no mass or energy can be transferred instantly. And so one way of perceiving it is, okay, take the Enochian. Like, the Enochian paradigm with John Dee and all of that, which I showed you the Enochian tablet. So, one way of perceiving this is instead of this being some massive summoning ritual and you're summoning these angels, which are actually spirits from somewhere else, rather you could see them as a form of programming, as a kind of information. And those tablets, those ensigns, that Sigilum Dei Meth, what that actually is code. And you're taking that code and you are getting into a program. Which, again, this isn't a model that I'm particularly familiar with, because I don't really stick with it, nor do I have a very scientific mind in that aspect. But that's one way of looking at it, that each of the angels, each of the watchtowers are actually different programs that have been encoded in the universe.
And that's a pretty, very basic way of putting it, because I do most of my work is more with information model.
Okay.
And the way that I use information model is, it's kind of, the programming thing is kind of a way to think about it, but you think about, like, and we'll get into the concept of your holy guardian angel.
Yeah.
In a moment or later on in the episode. Where the idea of contacting your holy guardian angel is the idea of tapping into your future magical will, or where you want to be at some point, right? So, if that's what everything you're working towards, with the definition of magic being to make yourself a better person, what you're doing through that work is gleaning information, which again has no mass, it has no way of being constrained. You're gleaning information from your future self or from your past self because that information isn't constrained by time. And that's how I kind of frame it. So I might be doing a ritual to invoke fucking Beelzebub. Whoever. Doesn't matter. What I'm actually doing is trying to invoke an aspect of myself which is unrestrained by time to glean information from it. And that's kind of how I look at things.
Does that make sense?
Well, that's the only one the watchtowers being programmed made a lot more sense just because it's like, okay, so this is what I'm doing, this is what I need, here's the code, I need the code, got the code, now I can kind of, transcribe it in a sense.
Right, and that would be how you could approach it, seeing rather as these things that you were contacting as being entities or whatnot. You see each one as being a different kind of code or a different program. And so with different programs execute different functions. And so say I am doing a wealth magic thing. I want more money. So what you could do is, of course, you wouldn't contact the god of the trees in order to get more money because that's a completely different program. Rather, you would talk to Mammon or some other deity that has to do with wealth or gold because that's the thing you're doing. Because if, say, you're using Cool Edit Pro, that's going to work with audio. I'm not going to type up my resume on that because that's a completely different program. It's not going to work right.
Sense.
That whole thing breaks down, though, if you start writing in Python, because you can do anything in Python.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not a programmer.
Just ask anybody who's worked with Python. You can do anything in Python.
All right, well, I'll do that later. And just have somebody write me a program so I don't have to fuck with this anymore.
There you go.
Because I'll just stick with the psychological model and y'all can suck it.
But realistically, you as a magician are never going to just be just in one model.
Yeah, I'm assuming it's like a mix of all of them.
You kind of flow in between different things and how they work, and, especially if you're doing group work.
That is the last model.
Boom.
Is it group work?
No.
Meta model. Which is you use what model works for you in what moment.
So a little bit of spirit, a little bit of psychology.
Whatever you're working, like if that's the one that works for you at that moment, you work with it. So if I'm working within something that, if I'm working in, say, a paradigm that's dealing with virtual reality or something, I'll use the information model because I'm working with coding and I'm working with computers and shit like that. Versus if I'm out in the woods just eating strange mushrooms that I find on the ground, I'm probably going to stick with spirit model because all of a sudden the trees and the rocks are talking to me.
Yeah, it's you're patching things together and using what works. And that comes a lot into play when you're doing group magic. If I'm doing a ritual with Yara, I'm going to be, whatever that ritual is crafted in, that's the model I'm working in.
Which, speaking of which, we've talked about paradigms before. We've mentioned it several times. What is a paradigm?
What is a paradigm, guys? This is the first episode. I don't know.
Bullshit. You've been doing this. We've had 2 failed recorded episodes.
We're breaking the 4th wall.
Oh, go, guys.
Okay, so, on the topic of paradigm, we're going to take the definition from Joshua Wetzel from his book, The Paradigmal Pirate. Since chaos magic is nothing more than a series of techniques designed to produce magical results, and since it gets really boring staring at a sigil taped to the wall day in and day out, the chaos magician chooses readily enough to either fully explore the range and depth of a viable belief structure or rip it off for everything she can get out of it, then move on to something else new and exciting.
Exciting.
So the difference between a religion and a paradigm is how you look at it. A paradigm is something that you can take from. For example, prayer from Christianity. I can take, if I'm viewing Christianity as a religion, I have to follow all of those rules.
Oh yeah, that's a good
All of them.
good point. It's all the tenets.
If I'm looking at Christianity as a paradigm, and if prayer works for me in a ritual, I can take that. But that doesn't mean that I actually think that I'm talking to Big G God.
Like, okay, so one example that I like giving is when it comes to switching between paradigms and using what works for you. So, Dreadnought had recently mentioned that he has been working a lot in Kabbalah. So when it comes to Kabbalah, Kabbalah comes from mystic Judaism. So with mystic Judaism, yes, Kabbalah may work for him, and Kabbalah's awesome, and that's great. But probably he's still going to be over here chugging bacon cheeseburgers.
Yes.
Because
all the time.
Kosher doesn't work for him.
Yeah. Or another thing that I've worked with a lot is Zen Buddhism. The idea of using Zazen and practicing meditation daily. It works for me. I'm able to do that for, 20 minutes at the beginning of my day. And it helps to align myself and figure out what I'm trying to do that day. By no means does that mean that I'm trying to achieve a Dharma transmission. I'm not trying to reach some fucking eightfold path of enlightenment, because if I wanted to do that, I would take Yara's advice and just get a frontal lobotomy.
Yeah, it's really easy to be one with nature when you don't have the cognizance of what's happening around you.
Yeah, so it's, you take and you borrow and steal and rip off and whatever.
Yeah.
Now, there are certain things, like, I think Yara and I go about it entirely different ways. I will read a book, or maybe 2 books, find some things that work for me, pull those out, work them into my deck, and now I've got that in my bag, I'm good to go. Yara, what was it, last year, 2 years ago, you spent an entire year practicing hoodoo?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, that's a deep dive. That's a whole year of just doing that.
Yeah.
And in that moment, it's not just for him, it's not just, oh, these things work for me, I'm putting them in my bag. It's, now I've decided that I believe in hoodoo and I'm practicing hoodoo.
Okay.
And it's one thing, because a lot of people, when approaching it this way, have said that if you follow these tenets, to become entirely engrossed in it is something totally different than just picking bits from it. Like, if you jumping in the river is a totally different experience than getting your feet wet. And so when it comes to different paradigms, that's what I want to do. I want to get the most of it that I can to see what experiences I get out of it. And so that's why I do the deep dives. And so coming up this year, the next year, maybe 2, I'm going to just be participating in Clothotic death worship. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to stop doing other things, because if someone else requires me to play a part in one of their group rituals, yeah, of course I'm going to believe, Clothotic death doesn't matter, and it doesn't really exist. Instead, I believe in fairies now. So, it's all up to you as a practitioner.
Yeah, so essentially that's what paradigms are, is just taking in what I need and what I'm going to be using at the time, and then just kind of deciding if I want to put that in my bag or not, or just, well, I've tried it, I didn't like it.
Well, that's paradigmal piracy. A paradigm itself is a noun, and a paradigm, the best way I could describe it is a way of looking at the world. So, be it Christianity, be it hoodoo, be it Hinduism, any formal set or formal method of looking at the world
is the paradigm.
Yes. But what we were discussing is what a paradigm does.
Yeah.
That is a definition of what a paradigm is.
Okay.
Yep.
In paradigmal piracy. That was exactly what it is, just taking a bar and different things.
There's a book where we got the definition from, The Paradigmal Pirate by Joshua Wetzel, that has a lot of really good takes on it and a lot of interesting ideas about it. And there's also, he even goes so far in that book as to talk about, like, okay, you can restructure children's games that everybody played as a kid, and turn those into a ritual. And it's all about how you look at the thing that you're doing as to whether it holds any relevance to a ritual or not.
Okay. So now that we're on that, what is a ritual?
a step-by-step process of things that you do to achieve an end goal of some sorts.
It's not a bad definition.
That's pretty much what it is.
Yeah, personally, my own definition is a series of actions, vocalizations, etc., towards a particular intent, designed to make that intent manifest.
Well, it sounds like you have that written down.
I do, just like I have your definition written down. Would you like to read it?
I can't. What is words? So basically how I define a ritual is basically any action, or series of actions that is performed with primarily a magical intent.
Oh, you forgot the word pure. With pure or primarily magical intent.
See, I didn't want to read it because it sounds like this. I read like Ben Stein. That's what we're going for.
That's pretty dope.
But yeah, the way that you view a ritual is 90% intent. You can do, me shuffling cards is just me shuffling cards.
Yeah.
What's the intent of me shuffling those cards?
You tell me.
To randomize the deck, right? That's the intent.
Yep. Which, we also have Alan Chapman's definition of what a ritual is, which comes from his book, Advanced Magic for Beginners.
Great book.
Oh yeah, it's one of the ones that I recommend people who are getting into magic start reading. Which we have, decide what you want to occur.
Step 1.
Step 2, ensure that what you want has a means of manifestation.
Which we're getting back into the flying thing. Mm-hmm. There will be a way for that to manifest. It probably will not be what you think.
Step 3, choose an experience. Step 4, decide that the experience means the same thing as what you want to occur. Step 5, perform the act or undergo the experience. Step 6, result.
And that is basically a step-by-step of how to craft a ritual.
Yeah.
And that's how rituals work. The thing that's the hardest to get your head around there is intent and making two things mean the same thing.
Yep, which all comes back to psychology, or for me, the psychological model, which is forcing yourself to believe something. Because to chaos magicians, one of the most important things in our belt is belief is a tool. If you believe something strongly enough, then it manifests. If you honestly 100% believe that, throwing a piece of ham at my wall is going to mean that tomorrow you get a raise, then fucking, I've got ham for you, dog. Throw it at the wall, you're gonna get a raise tomorrow. But the problem with that is, you have to believe that. And that's one giant hurdle that a lot of people have difficulty with, is well, no, I'm just throwing ham at a wall, and then I have to clean up ham off of the wall.
Well, the other thing, and Chapman gets into this a lot in his book, and it also kind of has to do with just one of the base things with magic in general, is the lust for result, and how that's going to ruin a result, right? So when you're going through the act of throwing the ham at the wall, you need to honestly believe 100% that throwing ham at the wall means you get a raise, because that means you've just experienced getting a raise.
Yeah.
What happens most often with people who are starting out in chaos magic, and with people who've been doing it for years, I still have problems with it, is what you're doing when you're throwing this ham at the wall is you're focused on, I hope this magic works. And then you throw the ham at the wall, and now in that moment, what you've experienced is your magic working.
Yep. Because then, right after you perform that action, for the next 30 days, you're going to be saying, well, I threw the ham at the wall, I should be getting a raise any day now. But that's not how it works.
Yeah, it's just 100% you have to believe it. It doesn't mean that the results are going to be instantaneous.
No.
Right? You're like, the second that ham hits that wall, I am getting a raise. That is happening. Doesn't have to be immediately.
You're still looking at it wrong. By throwing the ham at the wall, you've already gotten the raise.
Yeah.
They're the same thing. You threw the ham at the wall, you got the raise. Those two experiences mean the same thing. If you throw the ham at the wall and you're like, oh, I'm going to get a raise, then you're going to get a raise.
Yeah.
Someday. Maybe.
Yep. I
can see now what you're saying, that the misconception of intent.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And now I understand it.
Everybody will get hung up on, I hope this magic works. Whoop, plop.
Yeah, instead of, this magic is working.
Right, and that's where we get into the definitions of what intent versus will is. Mm-hmm. Which, when we use will, we tend to use the capital W, will,
Okay.
versus intent. Intent is your desire for something to happen. Intent, which a lot of rituals, you'll start off with a statement of intent. So you'll start off with, it is my will to get a raise. And that is your intent. What your will is, however, at least to me, your will is your way of meshing with the universe. Your way of the universe looking out for you as a person. The more you are in line with how you are progressing through the universe, the more things are going to come your way.
So, I'm trying to think of a way to like just best describe this for me, who's just learning the ideas of this. I don't know.
Big will, right?
Big will.
Big willy style.
Yeah, the universe surrounding
Getting
you.
jiggy with it.
And like, I'm a blind man walking down the road. My intent is to get down the road, but with my big will,
your
that's
will
me
is,
helping me.
your will is not getting hit by a truck.
Yeah. Or being struck by a bus.
Like, one way of perceiving it is through the mystery schools of the Greek and Egyptian. They had what was called a daemon. And one things that the mystery schools and the Gnostic schools taught is that there is a reflection of yourself, like a heavenly reflection of yourself that exists on another realm. And that reflection is the perfect you. That reflection is everything that is great about you with no flaws whatsoever. And your goal is to get to there. That is your will. That daemon, that reflection, that idealon is your will.
That's a good way of describing it.
My will is to get the fuck out of this town. My intent is going to be to go buy a bus ticket.
Another good way of describing it.
Right.
Okay.
That the most common way you'll hear people talk about their will is your holy guardian angel, your future magical self.
Yeah, I know you brought that
your
up a little bit
daemon,
before.
things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And through the information model, your will, big will, the great work of contacting and basically achieving your holy guardian angel through the information model, that kind of gets back to where I was talking about, like, oh, everything, they're not constrained by time, they have no mass, they have no... Everything that you're doing is contacting and gleaning information from your holy guardian angel back to yourself. And with the intent of achieving that, or getting closer to that, or getting in line with that.
Which that is the definition of the great work. The great work, which a lot of people describe as magic. You have magic, which is the process. Mm-hmm. The great work is the process of attaining your big will.
Yeah, your perfect reflection.
Yes. So, we've got that. Next on definition, we have synchronicity, which parses in rather great with this. As I had said, the closer you are to attaining your will, towards following that process and getting there, the more things will go your way, which also expresses the more often you will begin to see synchronicities. So, a synchronicity, the concept of a synchronicity comes from Carl Jung, the psychologist, which one way of describing it comes from the artist Roderick Mayne in his book Jung on Synchronicity and the Paranormal. Synchronicity is the structure of reality includes a principle of acausal connection which manifests itself most conspicuously in the form of meaningful coincidences. So a meaningful coincidence is what a synchronicity is.
What is the term I'm thinking of? That's more layman for exactly that.
A coincidence. Like, it's, say...
Yeah.
Yeah, like, you're walking down the street and you're thinking about, say, we're thinking about getting together to play a D&D game, and you walk down the street and you see a 6-sided die on the road. That's that's a meaningful coincidence. That's a synchronicity. That means, okay, well, we clearly need to get together to play this game.
And then the closer you are to your great work, the
Your
more
will.
you see, the big will.
Yeah, the big will.
Closer you are to big will, the more of these synchronicities you just start seeing.
Yep. The more often you see them.
Yeah.
And that's one of the weird things. Like, as you start writing them down, which is one thing that I highly suggest, is keeping a journal of just synchronicities. The more often you notice them, the more they start happening.
The thing to realize with a synchronicity, though, or with synchronicities in general, is that by looking for them, you will never find them.
Yeah, they'll be blind as ever.
Nope.
You're never going to see them. Because what synchronicity is as a concept, realistically, synchronicity is a way of looking at the world that is going to get rid of if-then logic in your head. Of cause and effect.
Yeah.
And that's what you're trying to get rid of because you're trying to break that cycle in your brain. You're trying to get rid of this, oh, well, because I did this, this is going to happen. By noticing synchronicities and by keeping track of them and, again, noticing, you're not looking for them, that's usually how your magical results manifest.
Which one big goal that I have seen towards achieving your big will and all of that and getting in line with the universe and all of that noise is you, by noticing synchronicities and doing all of this work, doing the great work, you change how you perceive your reality by forcing yourself into constantly thinking in a magical mindset. Everything you do is magic. So magic with the art of, the art and
science.
The art and science of causing change to occur in conformity with will. Everything you do is an act of magic. So for example, I'm thirsty. What am I going to do to change that reality? Well, I'm going to reach over here, extend my arm, grab my drink, bring it to my mouth and swallow. All of a sudden, I'm no longer thirsty.
That's pretty magical.
Yes, you are enacting your reality to change what's going on around you. So, you're causing a change. Everything you do is magic. And so when you have that constant mindset of everything you do is magic, you're going to start seeing more result.
Yeah, you are actually making yourself available to be seen, everything that's happening to you, when you have this mindset.
And that goes back to what Dreadnought had said earlier with, the perception of performing a ritual means the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. It's, say, me reaching out and taking a drink. That's my act. That is my ritual to change my reality of me being thirsty. Me throwing ham against the wall is my act to change the reality of me needing a raise. It's the exact same thing.
I think I can follow with that, yeah. I mean, it seems as pretty simple as, dear listeners, we're going to perform our first ritual today. Me extending my arm, grabbing a beer because I'm thirsty with the intent of quenching that thirst, and opening it.
Boom, magic.
We just did it, guys.
Exactly. Now, the thing becomes when your intent is something entirely not
as simple as that.
That's where the trick of it comes in. Let's do a break right now.
Sure.
And then we'll come back and we'll
good.
keep doing some more definitions.
Right.
All right.
We'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsor, Welcome to Paradise. I know from personal experience that it can be really difficult to get the occult and ritual tools you need to continue or even begin your practice. Welcome to Paradise is an up-and-coming occult supply store that was created for magicians by magicians. Each and every item is either handcrafted or personally vetted by one of the practicing occultists that make up their team. Not only do they offer ritual and magical tools, Welcome to Paradise can also provide you with detailed tarot readings, occult-themed bone art, pendulums, one-of-a-kind rosaries, or even basic magical kits to help you on your journey through the great work. Welcome to Paradise is looking to build a community of magicians, whether veterans or novices, that seeks to help other practitioners hone their craft regardless of their path. So,
If you're on the lookout for ritual materials from hoodoo to Wicca to Left Hand Path and more, or if you're an artist that's wanting an outlet for their occult or magical themed goods, be sure to check out WelcomeToTerradice.com.
So we were talking about rituals.
Welcome back, by the way.
Fuck it. We're just going right in. I don't really care. Prepare yourself. So we're talking about rituals. Let's spend some time talking about kind of the components of rituals. And in chaos magic, one of the most key components of any ritual is gnosis.
Right, on top of belief. Gnosis is the method of getting into the mindset. So my definition of what gnosis is it's an altered state of mind during which the mind becomes focused on a singularity. It becomes focused to a singularity, to like a single point. Before we get into examples, I would like to point out that everyone has achieved gnosis. Absolutely everyone. It's just chaos magicians utilize it. So what gnosis is, coming to the point of singularity. As an example, asking you a question, Dylan, have you ever been so angry that nothing outside mattered but your own anger, like redding out?
Yeah.
Right.
I've experienced that before.
That's gnosis. Have you ever been so sad that nothing mattered but your own sadness?
Yeah.
That's gnosis. Have you ever danced or moved your body to the point where nothing mattered but the own movement of your limbs?
All the time.
That is gnosis. And that's what it is. Reaching that mind focus of singularity, bringing it down to a single point. That is gnosis. And that is one thing that you ascribe to achieve in every ritual in order to make that ritual work.
Like using gnosis or
Yes.
obtaining it?
Using it.
Using it.
Because you've already obtained it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So basically, gnosis, if you take the examples that Yara just gave, being so angry, being so sad, excitatory gnosis, which is the whole thing of dancing, drumming, etc., etc. The term gnosis itself is more about quantifying that and being able to use it. Because everybody's done it, but you probably didn't know you were doing it.
Yeah.
That's gnosis as a practice, for lack of a better term, is the process of quantifying and reusing that. It becomes easier the more you do it. And there are a bunch of different ways of achieving it. But the key thing to realize is that all of these different examples, being so angry, being so sad, being so high, being so energized, you're achieving the same thing. All of those different ways are just means of getting there, but they're all going to the same thing.
Right. And we qualify basically three different kinds of gnosis. There's excitatory gnosis, as Dreadnought has brought up. Excitatory gnosis is exactly that. Exciting yourself to that singularity. Be it dancing, be it, like loud music and running around, like just becoming excited, being so enthralled in an emotion.
Exercise.
Exercise is another one. Yes. There's also inhibitory gnosis, in which you inhibit part of yourself. So this could be through fasting, through sleep deprivation, through sensory deprivation. You take something away from yourself.
Wearing a blindfold.
Right. And then the third kind is either chemognosis or ethnogenic gnosis, which is the use of mind-altering substances. And this could be anything that alters your baseline of substances. It could be alcohol, it could be marijuana, it could be hallucinogens. Caffeine, yes. Anything that alters your baseline is a form of ethnogenic or chemognosis.
Are those both the same thing?
Yes, ethnogenic and chemo, yeah. It's just different words.
One thing that I think a lot of people kind of, I would classify it as ethnogenic gnosis. Eating so much that all you can think about is how full you are.
Like going to a Chinese buffet and just loading up.
Yeah. Just eating so much to where you can't even finish a sentence because you're just like, oh my god. Now, that's part of the problem with that is you're not going to necessarily feel like being up and moving a bunch, but it does the same thing.
Right, and that's one thing you're going to come across is different forms of gnosis that work better for you, and that are easier for you to focus during and being able to achieve through. So, for example, like, one that is very hard for people to even achieve is fear gnosis. So, fear gnosis, where everything is just, like, you are scared to the point of absolute, abject terror. But the problem therein lies when you are experiencing that much terror, being able to do anything during it
is extremely difficult.
Let alone being able to do the thing you intended to do. Although I think an argument can be made that if you've, like, when you reach that point of fear gnosis, whatever it is you do out of that is what your intent was, whether you were conscious of it or not.
Mm-hmm.
Because personally, I have achieved terror to the point where I couldn't move. All I could make was some kind of, like, whimper, cry, scream noise, and that was it. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't focus on anything else. It was just a... And being able to achieve anything outside of that would have been impossible. And so, like, fear gnosis isn't exactly one that a lot of people come to. Like, versus dancing or sleep deprivation.
More easily obtained gnosis.
There's one that I've used quite a few times. And I don't know how I would process it or put it in those other categories, but what I've kind of coined it as is process gnosis. When you're cleaning your apartment or your house or you're sorting something, and you will eventually get to a point like when you're sorting hundreds of pages of a book or something, that's all you're doing. You're not focused on anything else.
Process gnosis. I did that earlier today, cleaning my house. Perfect example.
The problem with that is once you're focused on that process,
everything else is impossible to see.
Getting to go to a point where you're doing something else, it's very hard to do that without breaking that Gnostic state altogether. Or Gnosis state, I guess I should say.
Yeah, Gnostic works too.
Yeah. So that's Gnosis, I think, in a nutshell. There are a bunch of different ways of achieving it. Everybody has achieved it.
And the point of doing it, because, yeah, we've brought up, how to do it, what it is, but why? Why do you need to achieve Gnosis? Well, within the psychological model, the reason why you achieve Gnosis is because it allows you to get past that psychic filter, and what we term the psychic filter. Which the psychic filter is that separation between your conscious mind and your subconscious mind. So when you achieve Gnosis, you're taking something that's happening within your consciousness, your reality, and by bringing it to a point, to a singularity, you're able to pierce that psychic filter and embed that intent within your subconscious. So that way your subconscious is able to act it out. Because without doing that, there's always going to be that lust for result, or acting in a certain way in order to make that manifest. But if you get past that psychic filter, embed that little seed within your subconscious, and then just forget that you did anything, your subconscious is going to start working around that.
To add on to that, here's like an unpopular hot take.
Oh no.
Again, going back to advanced magic.
We're gonna have to edit this out.
But going back to advanced magic for beginners, Gnosis is not necessary to do chaos magic.
No.
It's incredibly helpful, but it's not necessary. And I would say the easiest way to be able to test that is something we're going to get into here in just a second with sigils. And I'll bring it full circle once we've kind of described and talked about what a sigil is and how a sigil works.
Right.
So we'll just go straight into that. What is a sigil?
Yep. A sigil, by my definition, is a visual representation of an idea, an intent, a desire, or something that is intangible. So, a physical representation, be it a little squiggle, a drawing, you have massive sigils that are giant pieces of art that are representative of something intangible, like be it your life, something like that. Any religious symbol, say a cross or the Om. It's a representation of something that is intangible. It is a representation of an idea.
I have a personal sigil that represents me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just him, not just his physical self. It is all attributes of himself.
In the form of sigil?
Yes. So something that is completely non-tangible. It is those aspects of his mind, those aspects of how he thinks about things, how he relates to other people. It's a representation of something that is entirely intangible, but it is brought to something that you can see.
Well, not only that, it's not necessarily, like, because it represents me doesn't necessarily mean that it represents me. Like, which is a whole mind fuck, right? But it's something that I can use to visualize when I'm trying to contact my holy guardian angel.
Yeah,
it's something
something physical you can hold and kind of like...
It's something I can use when I'm trying to put myself into a ritual. I can use that sigil to visualize myself and put myself in the context of the work that I'm doing. Like, that's the purpose. Also, it's a cooler way of writing my name. Like...
Yeah. I mean, for all intents and purposes, sigils take up a lot. Like, sigils are something that show up a lot in your daily life. Like, is your signature, like, something that is easily legible?
Not mine.
All right,
it's more a little unique.
That is a sigil representing yourself. You also have, like, corporate sigils. The golden arches. That's a sigil representative of the corporation McDonald's.
Money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Money is a sigil.
Yeah. The S with 2 lines through it. That's money. That is a sigil. Like or even letters themselves are sigils. They are visual representations of intangible things. Sounds. The sound your voice makes is a sigil. Like a letter representing that is a sigil. So sigils are everywhere. And it's us as chaos magicians that utilize those as more than just, oh, that's a cool little design.
Oh, that's a McDonald's.
Right.
It's what can you make that mean? And that's the importance of sigils. So we've talked about what a sigil is. Let's talk about what a sigil does.
Okay. So the method that is laid out, it comes from Austin Osman Spare's work, and it was laid out in Liber MMM, which is part of the Liber Null and Psychonaut, written by Peter Carroll, who helped found the whole chaos magic movement with Ray Sherwin and all of that. But what it is, in creating a sigil, you are able to take your desire, right, and bring it down into one visualized representation. And by manifesting it in that way, it's able to manifest itself in your reality. So, going back to earlier examples, writing down, it is my will to fly, according to Spare's work and the work laid down by Carroll, what you do is write that out. It is my will to fly. Take out all vowels, take out all repeating letters, and you're left with a couple letters left over. You take that and then kind of design it into something that looks magical to you, something that has a kind of meaning, some representation. And then what you do is you achieve Gnosis, hopefully. You don't necessarily have to, but for all intents and purposes, it's the easiest way to get it done. Achieve Gnosis, and then in that Gnostic state, focus on it. Which goes back all the way to the beginning of the episode where you just jerk off at squiggly pieces of paper. You have this little design which you can achieve Gnosis by just masturbating, achieving orgasm, and at the point of orgasm, focus on that sigil, and then forget about it. And then that's how it's going to manifest itself.
So there is a method to my madness.
Yeah, just cracking it out every day for 3 months.
Yeah. And what you're doing is then charging that sigil through achieving Gnosis, focusing on it, and that charges the sigil to go out and get shit done. Then you need to banish that sigil. The easiest ways to banish a sigil are basically once you're done doing that sigil, just go do something.
Yeah. So
clean your apartment.
Yeah, it's just so banish it, like just to make it go away, and then just go about my day.
Yeah, you're getting rid of the magical concept, the magical work that you're trying to do in your conscious mind. You
Go ahead.
Go clean your apartment, go play some video games, watch some TV, whatever it is to distract yourself. Now to go back to that point I was making a few minutes ago, it is possible and not super difficult once you're experienced. That's the caveat. Once you're experienced, you can use sigils reliably without achieving Gnosis. And that's kind of that point of you can make anything work. That's chaos magic, right? So the steps that are laid out in Liber MMM of like, okay, you write all this stuff down and then you cross out the letters and then you make it look something magical. You can skip most of those steps. Just think of what you want to do and make something that looks magical. You don't need the letters there. That's just to help you focus.
Yeah.
So you can make that sigil anything you want it to be. You could fucking not physically draw a sigil. You don't have to. You can just imagine something. Like, you can do all of this stuff. It becomes easier the more you work with it. And the way that's laid out in Liber MMM is the most reliable way to get it done. But as you get more familiar and as you work with them more, you don't need to do that. And at that point, you're starting to understand what a sigil does, how a sigil works, and you'll start to see the very core components of what it is. And at that point, you can kind of start playing with things and doing whatever the fuck you want to do with it.
Yeah, just kind of rearranging it to however you kind of want it to be.
Or whatever works the most for you.
Yeah.
You know, like you can do anything. There's other ways of doing sigils. You can do sigils through like a mantra. You can do a sigil through just visualizing it. You can do, there's, you know, any fucking thing that works for you, you can do.
Yeah, and what I'm picking up the most here is extremely personal.
Yeah,
like
it's
the way I'll do chaos magic, you two will never be able to grasp it.
Nope.
highly.
In the sense that, well, like how you two, Yar and Dreadnought, can never fathom how you do this, but that's because it's so personal to you.
All chaos magic is a form, it's techniques. That's what it is. That's what we're doing here. The entire point of this podcast, the entire point of everything we are doing here is to show techniques.
Man, I don't know what you're talking about. The whole point I'm doing this podcast is so I don't have to work a job anymore.
Yes, and that makes this podcast a hyper sigil so that way we don't have to work anymore. But negating that, we are teaching techniques, and that's what we want to do. We want to be able to teach you, Dylan, and the listener everything there is to start practicing. Start doing it. Not because there's so many other magical podcasts or whatever that approach it from an academic standpoint.
Yeah, more like of a book sense.
And not that there's anything wrong with that. They're entertaining to listen to, and you can glean some information from them. But you're never gonna you're never gonna finish listening to fucking, I don't know, a culture.
Right.
You're not gonna listen to that and be like, oh yeah, this is how I can do this right now. Right. You're not going to listen to the magical episodes of like last podcast.
No.
And be like, oh yeah, I could start doing this right now.
Yeah, and it is interesting, the interviews they have, which is one thing that we're looking on doing in the future is interviewing people. But, like, say the interviews on Rune Soup, they're going to have conversations with this person's experiences and practicing. Your experiences are fine, that's great, and we will love to hear about your experiences, and that's one thing we're going to have, is hearing about your experiences, particularly, Dylan, as we learn these techniques. But the techniques are what is most important, and that is what chaos magic is, and what we're trying to focus on is the technique.
And as a caveat, like, I'm not trying to, like, talk shit about any other show
Oh, no.
out there. Like,
No,
by
I
any
absolutely
means.
love all of these other ones.
Go listen to them. They're fucking good shows. But this show, the design of this show, the mechanism of this show is to get people doing shit that, like, oh yeah, I could go do this right now.
Yeah, instead of listening to other podcasts, it's like, oh, so these people are getting their hands dirty. Ours is more like, well, this is how we're going to do it.
Not only that, like, but you could listen to like an interview on some other show and, oh, I should go check that fucking book out. That book sounds really good. And you should. Go read all the fucking books. Like, do all of that. I should really listen to this other show. You fucking do it. Just sponge up as much information as you can and do all that. But what we're trying to do here is give you something like, here's a roadmap of shit I can start doing.
Right.
Yeah, the
And
techniques to use it.
So that's why, talking about sigils and sigils, I would say, to kind of draw it back in, sigils are probably the most basic component of chaos magic in practice.
Yeah.
And as far as bringing everything together, Gnosis and magical models and all this other bullshit we've been talking about for the last hour and some change, a sigil is the most basic form of practicing magic that you can do right now. And I would argue is the only magic that you need. Like I know several people that are like successful chaos magicians in their own way, and they don't do rituals. They don't put on fucking creepy looking robes and run around in the woods at night, fucking tripping dick on acid and pretending to stab each other. Like, they just do sigils, and it works for them. And like, that's what chaos magic is. It works.
Right. And honestly, the reason behind performing anything, like any ritual that's more advanced than just drawing on a piece of paper, is to increase your belief in it. Like, for me, if I'm going to be performing a ritual that, takes days and days in order to research and perform, and we all have a role, and we all have different outfits, and we do all of this, the reason for doing that is because by performing this, it's going to strengthen my belief in it. Because by all of us wearing black robes and carrying around these fucking daggers and having all of these sigils and lights and whatever, it's going to mean more to me. It's going to embed itself even deeper, the fact that I did something, holy shit, I did something.
Yeah, like going back to what you're saying, pushing small things through the mesh into your subconscious.
Yeah.
Doing everything you described sounds like taking a handful of acorns and shoving it through.
Right.
Now, what I would argue as a counterpoint to that, and it's again, you're looking at differences in magical models, I would argue that what you're doing by dressing up a ritual and doing all of this stuff is you're hiding more of it. And not hiding more of it to make it confusing, but hiding it from your conscious. Right. So that what you remember, you don't remember consciously when you think about it later. Because you always think about whatever it is you did later. When you do a sigil and it pops up in your head later, you're like, oh yeah, I made the sigil so that I can concentrate better at work. Right? The more you dress something up, and the more you're like, okay, we were all wearing different color robes, we were standing in this circle, we chanted this mantra, we fucking put this, representation, this effigy down, and we burnt the effigy, and then we took the ashes, drew a new sigil, and that's our egregore, right? When you remember all of that, you're not going to remember, oh, we did this because of this. You're just going to remember, we were all standing around in these fucking things, and he was on acid, and I was on acid, and everybody was on acid, and woo! Like, that's what you're going to remember.
There's going to be more symbolism, and the fact that there's more symbolism obfuscates it. And through that obfuscation, it makes it harder for your conscious mind to parse that meaning apart. And so, obviously, it means something to your subconscious mind, but if you try and think about, oh, well, why did I do this? That it's going to make it more difficult, which is where you get, like, the term occult, which is why we use the term occult. Occult comes from the Latin meaning hidden, from the eye. Like, it's something that is below the surface.
That's literally like what I was about to go into before we get into the next parts of magic.
Synchronicities!
Bam, baby! But occult, like, that's what occult is. It's just hidden. Yeah. And then you think about the function that serves, and it just serves to keep your mind distracted. Even if we go back further to add on to my personal definition of magic, like, my definition, or even adding on to my definition of ritual, I guess, is everything that you're doing in a ritual serves to strengthen that ritual by hiding the ritual's result or desire or intent or whatever you want to use. But I think that's a pretty good spot there. Let's move on. So we've got sigils down.
Yep.
So sigils. All right.
Sigils.
So let's move on to, now we've got mudras and mantras, which are other parts of sigils or other ways of thinking about sigils, but they're related but not the same.
More ways to kind of obfuscate things to your conscious mind. What a mudra is basically
like a gesture.
A gesture or how your body is positioned in a particular way. It's kind of like, think of it as a physical bodily representation of a sigil.
Literally think of it as going through the motions.
Yeah. So, okay, for example, the word mudra comes from the Hindu tradition. And so you have hand gestures that mean certain things. Take a look over there at my statue of Baphomet. How he's sitting there in a certain position. His hands held in a certain way are representing specific aspects as to what she is trying to represent. So you have Salwe and no, I forget the other one.
Doesn't matter. The
Anyway.
point is,
But it's a physical a bodily representation of this idea of bringing things together, different aspects of what Baphomet represents.
So doing these poses is, in a sense, you are the sigil?
it's a
Yes.
tuning fork.
Yeah.
There are, like, one of the easiest one in Zazen, right? Zazen meditation. By rights, you want to do what's called the universal mudra, which the universal mudra is you take your hands, you make a cup with your fingers, and then you clasp your thumbs over top at or about your navel.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea with that mudra is to invoke the aspect of openness, and emptiness. But this by itself doesn't mean that.
Right.
You're doing it as a way to just focus your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Boom. Remembered. Coagula. So you've got it. So Baphomet has the hands up and down. Salve, coagula. Salve coming from Latin meaning like solvent, to take things apart, to separate. Coagula, bring things together, coagulate. But with one hand going up, one hand going down, you also have the representation of as above, so below. So it's an occult secret that is hidden within a pose. You have as above, so below. Unless you knew that occult secret, you would have no idea. It's just holding your hands in
Yeah,
a certain
that's what
way.
I thought it was. Just,
Right.
It looks cool.
Right. But it is representative of something. And so by obfuscating that secret, by making it occult, it holds a certain meaning within your mind.
Yeah, so like, that pose in particular, I guess, is a good example. That is as below, so below. Or as above, so below.
As below, so below.
All below.
In other words,
In the dumpster, in the gutter.
in other words, it is what it is. She got a big booty, so I call her Big Booty.
Word.
And that's the 2 Chainz tie-in. Did it. Nailed it. Boom.
If this
Next
is happening
song.
every episode, I'm going to strangle you in your sleep.
Next song.
I know where you live.
Are you going to strangle me with 2 Chainz? Next song.
I hate you.
This is the endorsement, everyone.
I hate everything about you.
Next week, we're playing Puma.
Alright, so we have the mudra. What a mantra is the vocalization, doing the same thing.
But vocally.
Yes. So, instead of a bodily position, now it is words. It is sounds coming from your throat, coming from your diaphragm that are representative of the same thing. So you could take the words that are written on the arms of Baphomet, Salve, and Coagula. That is a mantra. You just repeat over and over, Salve, Coagula, Salve,
So
Coagula.
like a Om.
Yes. Om. Om is a perfect example of a mantra.
Boom.
Absolutely. Well fucking done. That is perfect.
A plus for the new guy, everyone.
Now,
Yep.
there's also There's a school of sigil creation that goes into mantras. There's a way to make mantras out of sigils, basically, where you do the same thing in the beginning, where you take all the words. Except for in this one, you're crossing out consonants. You take all of the vowels that are left over, and you kind of make it into this, like, sing-songy, rhythmic, whatever.
Which, again, you can do it however you want.
Yeah.
However works for you. Instead of taking out vowels, you could do it the exact same way. Take out the vowels. Take out the repeating consonants, so that you've just got a jumble of letters. Add in whatever vowels you want.
Yeah.
So you're left over with, like, letters like S and V and T and B, and so you're SVTB, so just throw those together and jumble them up. You've got that boss. There you go.
Fat boss.
Fat boss.
Fat boss guides. Boom.
Fat boss.
Nailed it. Anyway, so that's, it all kind of, they're related. They're not the same thing, but they can be used the same way. It's all just, it's basically you're taking all the sex parts and putting them in a pot. And boom, you're making magic.
Question about mantras. As the reference was,
the answer
taking out consonants and keeping the vowels. What if I wanted to keep the consonants?
Do whatever you want. Doesn't matter.
Alright, so my mantra just could be Heart and Soul by Huey Lewis and the News.
Yeah.
You have to. Here's the thing with that, though. On a serious note.
Here's the thing with that. First of all, I hate you and everything you stand for.
See, you've taken the fire off of the 2 Chainz references. But the thing with that is, like, you can do that, and I'll even take that on in, like, a serious way. Like, it's, meant to be a joke.
Actually, it was a very serious question.
You can do that, but the problem is, with something like that, the more that your brain consciously ascribes meaning to it, the harder it is to make it a mantra that means something else.
Yeah, instead of just,
so, cause you're
Heart and Soul by Huey Lewis.
Yeah, if you've got that in your head, like, you're gonna be, that's Heart and Soul by Huey Lewis.
I really like this song. I want to sing to it.
Which
and then lose all feel.
Yeah, it can absolutely work. I mean, using any song as kind of a mantra, just pick out a fucking popular song. Okay, Man-Eater, Hall & Oates. Is that Hall & Oates?
Who cares?
Who gives a shit?
The answer.
Hall & Oates.
Anyway, you pull out that song. Every time you listen to that song and sing along with it, it means like it boosts your confidence.
Yeah, or just like gets me more excited towards the Gnosis.
Yeah.
And you can do that, but the thing is, like, the more you pick, it's the same reason you generally don't see a lot of serious practitioners using, like, pop culture magic, right?
Yeah. Don't tell me what to do.
You'll see it from time to time. I've done it. Everybody's done it. But you don't see a lot of people doing, like, I don't know, like, you don't see people like, oh yeah, I'm gonna make an egregore that's whole thing, it's basically Rick from Rick and Morty.
Yeah, speak for yourself.
Because, that being said, I've done magic where I made a fucking servitor out of a Meeseeks. Like, you can do it.
But
you have to know what you're doing, and you have to know why you're doing it, and, like, create that intent. And then here's the really hard part, you gotta forget it.
And that's gonna be the one thing.
Alright, and we'll move on from there. We've already brought it up a couple times. Servitor, egregore. We've brought that up.
Yeah.
So, my definitions, which again, as with the rest of this, could be entirely wrong, but this is how it works for me. So, according to how I work with everything, you have a scale of how effective things are. You have sigil at the very bottom. A sigil is like a very mindless representation of something. Go ahead.
A sigil is taking a gun and shooting.
Right. If something gets in the way, like a Kevlar vest, it's stopped. I am gonna murder you, cat. Get out of here.
Exactly. That's a sigil right there.
Yeah.
The cat gets in the way, we can't finish what we were talking
No, we
about.
can't.
Boom. Synchronicity.
Yeah, got it. Still gonna murder that cat. With love and a water bottle.
And a dagger.
Yep. Okay, so a sigil is at the very bottom. One step up from that is a servitor. A servitor is a creation that you have that has a mind of its own, yes, but it's very limited. So think of something with
literally, if you're familiar with Rick and Morty, a Meeseeks.
Yeah.
Okay.
It has a goal, and it's going to try and work around it. Like, if there's an obstacle in the way, it's going to try and work around it, but at the same time, it can become frustrated and can't work precisely, and it can fuck things up, or just, like, dissipate. Because it can't get past that goal.
So if we're talking about a sigil being, you take a gun, load a round, and shoot, a servitor would be a heat-seeking missile.
Or those fucking bullets from the Angelina Jolie movie, where they
But that's about the people.
fucking bend them and shit.
That's the people, that's not the magic bullets. Anyways, it's a heat-seeking missile. It has a way of getting around certain shit. But if that heated target that it's being shot at is in a bunker,
Right.
it's still not going to work.
Or like throws a Molotov cocktail left and runs to the right.
Now, the other thing with that is if there's other shit going on, if you're in a car that's got a superheated engine, it's going to hit the engine and not the target, right? Like, the higher up you go in this
Yeah, this
tree,
example. Yeah, tree actually. Is
the bigger the risk is of something fucking up, and having unforeseen consequences.
So then one step up from servitor is going to be egregore. An egregore very much has a mind of its own. And this is where some things can fuck up. Because you're basically creating something that has its own will. It has its own intent to do something. So, so for example, my wife and I have created a family egregore. An egregore that works for us. There are going to be times with that egregore that it's going to make a decision that is best for us. It works best for us, but it goes against what we're wanting at that time. So, like, there may be a time in the future when, our side business picks up and everything, and our egregore decides, you know what? This is enough to supply you with what you need right now. You've both lost your primary jobs.
Okay.
Or one of you just got fired.
Yeah.
One of you just got fired, and you're going to have to work around that. I'm going to help you to the best of my ability, and things are going to get better, but this is what's best for you right now. You may not see it right now, but this is honestly what's best for you.
So, going back to our weaponized, you've got the gun, the heat seeker, and egregore is like putting fucking, why am I blanking on the character's name from fucking Man on Fire? Creasy. It's like putting John Creasy on the case, right?
Oh, no.
John Creasy's got his own way of doing shit. John Creasy's gonna continue to exist after it's served its purpose, and it's gonna keep iterating and iterating and iterating and doing these things, and you gotta be ready for that. And egregore, especially for a novice magician, or someone who's very new to it, egregores are not something to, like, trifle with.
Which this is something you've probably heard another term for it, being utilized a lot on the internet, rather than use the term egregore. The term I've come across a lot online is tulpa.
Tulpa?
Tulpa. Tulpa. A tulpa is basically a separate consciousness that you can continue to communicate with, you can have conversations with. It has its own will, it will work with things. But you are the one who creates it. It's like having a child. It is creating a child, and it will have its own will, and it will ostensibly obey you. But it
to the best of its wherewithal, to the best of its ability. You tell an egregore, I want to make more money, right? I want to be financially, I want to be set right now, right? Egregore's like, okay, cool. You work at a job that has workman's comp. Guess who's losing 3 fingers? Like,
yeah.
Like, that is something that
So you don't actually control
No.
the egregore at all.
No.
You just kind of have
You
it
give
with you, and it just makes decisions
There
for you.
still is a form of control because there is a dead man switch. You can still destroy the egregore.
That was actually going to be my next question. It's like,
Yes.
what if is it possible
Because
to make a bad egregore?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. That is a very real thing.
Yes.
And now your warning makes more sense.
And the way to
know.
get rid of it is by destroying it. And the only way that an egregore continues to exist is by giving it energy, giving it your consciousness, paying attention to it, and doing that. The minute you stop any of that, say the minute you destroy a sigil that you've created for it and stop paying attention to it, stop doing anything for it, is the minute it ceases to be.
And that's why, when you talk about the creation of an egregore, the easiest way to kind of, like, one of the classic examples of creating an egregore is making a golem. Classically, like, and you can you read in old, like, Jewish texts about making golems.
Sefer Yetzirah, that's the text.
Boom. There we go. See, that's why we have him here.
Yep.
But you read about literally making a golem. That is making an egregore. And so you have this physical representation of it, a sigil, a model, of whatever. And that's your kill switch. I want to get rid of it. It's fucking shit up. Boom. Crush, burn the sigil, crush the...
Yeah, then it's just, that's it.
Yep.
The harder part, like, the more physical you can make that representation, the easier your kill switch is.
Mm-hmm.
If your representation is just a sigil, you go back to the old movie trope of you can't kill an idea. You can burn that physical sigil, but if you think about it again and it shows up, you're now paying consciousness to it. It's still there.
Yep. And egregores become more willful the more people you create it with. I have created egregores with other people. And they very much have a will of their own. And they will work for what's best for the group. However, like, it would take by putting all of our thoughts into it, by putting all of our energies into it, it's going to be much, much more harder to destroy because you have all of these different consciousnesses that are adding energy to it. And so in order to destroy it, it has to be a direct correlation with how much energy went into creating it, a ritual going to destroy it.
So, like 5 people making one, and 4 of them, or like everyone just, we want to get rid of it, but this one person just like, still thinks about it every now and again. That's giving it life, so it's not actually gone.
That's fucking weird. Like, I didn't even fucking say anything in my, like, you saw me, I didn't touch my tablet at all, and now, like, it's saying, what, become more willful the more people you created with. I have created egregores with other people, and so now that did a search, and that's weird, and I don't like that.
Hey, now, another thing to think about, a group egregore, you make a group egregore with 5 people, and one of them dies.
Oh.
Yep.
Or one of them leaves and stops practicing magic. That's another aspect that is less talked about as far as why magic, specifically chaos magic, is a highly individual practice. I don't think that's something that's talked about as much. I think that's something, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's something that's worth bringing up.
Yeah, it's like my entire idea of this entire thing was, it's individualistic to the point where you are the individual practicing it, but it's never bad to have a group of people doing the same thing.
Except for when that fucks up.
Except when things like this
for example, appear. Yara. I trust Yara implicitly. I will do any, work of magic with Yara to do, whatever. But part of the reason why I do a lot of my magic by myself is because then at that point, those fuck-ups are on me. Like, if something goes wrong, it affects my life. It doesn't affect...
Yeah, it's not the team, it's the you.
Yeah, it affects me.
Which is why a lot of the times when you work group rituals, you want the intent behind the ritual to be as nebulous as possible. Sometimes.
Yeah.
But not always. Sometimes you want it to be very, very focused, very...
intricate?
Yes, very intricate, very defined. But sometimes you do want it to be very nebulous and very undefined because it could lead to other things and different consciousness coming to different perspectives.
Yep, and then you just, if it doesn't work out, rinse and repeat.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Start over again.
Exactly. So I think that pretty much covers us on egregores, servitors.
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to say further than that is one step up from that. At least in my own personal practice, you have God forms.
Oh, so God form being the step above egregore.
Where the step above an egregore where you can't destroy it because so much energy has gone into it. Yeah. Name a god.
Generally, with God forms, it's not something you create.
Maybe like a group thing.
No. Generally, a God form.
Like, they're very, like... ostensibly, yes, every god form has been created. Like,
But not by you.
not by you. Unless you are someone like, say, Ray Kroc, who created Ronald McDonald. That's a god form that was created by him.
And to go even like more biblical on it, archangels.
Yeah.
You ain't destroying an archangel, because there have been thousands of years of thought put into empowering those god forms.
The only way to actually destroy that god form would be to completely erase every writing that has ever been done on that god form, and then wipe out any person who remembers it.
So destroying the actual memories of the human
Yes,
race. In a sense, is erasing that entire portion of all thought.
Yep.
One slightly comical way that it was said in jest, but it's kind of serious.
Yeah.
About god forms are egregores that have gotten way out of hand.
Yeah, they're just got too big for their britches.
No, that's like you ain't stopping it. You've made a juggernaut, and you're not stopping that for nothing. And part of the reason I don't usually put god forms into something, when I'm talking about levels of magic, or whatever, is because usually a god form is not something that you create individually or even as a group. You usually don't create a god form.
No, god forms are typically things that you consult, because that's the difference between them. With an egregore, a servitor, a sigil, you can direct them. You can create them, you can destroy them, but with the god form, you have to appease it. You have to be on its level and be like, okay, what can I do for you?
One of the most fundamental forms that god forms take is Goetia. Generally, the more you talk about people, especially people who have done goetic work, which Yara and I have both done pretty extensive goetic work, generally when you're talking about working with Goetia, a lot of people are like, oh my god, it's demons, and no, it's not that these god forms have, like, what have you summoned, blah, 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 but they very much have wills of their own. They very much have their own goals, they have their own ends.
If they don't want to work with you, they ain't gonna work with you.
So you talk about, you're doing whatever, and you're dealing with them.
Yeah.
They're not unreasonable, beings.
It sounds like, with all the other ones, it's ritual, substitute, and egregore. And
Sigil, servitor, egregore.
Servitor, egregore, then god form. With the tree example, wouldn't the fourth one be you, and then the fifth one being the only one above you is god form, since you, in a sense, like, everything below you is more of a servitude sort of thing? It's working for you or with you?
If that's how you see it, then that's how you see it. The reason I said no to begin with is I don't really go by the tree form of it. I go by more so circles within circles within circles within circles.
Yeah. Okay, so putting it in that perspective actually changes it all.
Yeah.
Because I'm using the tree as my example.
Yeah, because an argument can be made with the tree form that the god form is the root of it.
Yeah, and everything
and
else is going
up and up and up. But it's all how you want to look at it.
Yeah.
And the way that makes the most sense to me, again, working a lot with the information model, is basically you think about the world as just this gigantic, never-ending Venn diagram. Everything is connected within itself and to each other, etc., etc. And I think that as you're tapping into that, again, through the information model, the idea is, because nothing is, like, ideas and thoughts aren't constrained by time, I can go all the way to the other end of, a bunch of different Venn diagrams away and grab something and pull it back, and that's what I'm doing. Now, how far do I want to reach? If I'm reaching a couple of little circles out from me, I can do that with a sigil. I can do that with a servitor. I can do that with a ritual. If I want to get all the way over the fuck here, I need to consult a god form for that. That's just my take on it. And there are a million billion different takes, and they're all equally right. Because the most, at least as far as, like, the Lamic magic goes, nothing is true, everything is permitted. Whatever works for you, do it.
Yeah, it works for me, it's gonna work for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say that's Thelemic, but...
Well, the Thelemic is do what thou wilt.
Yeah.
But I guess nothing is true, everything permitted is like a core tenet of chaos magic, which is heavily based in that thelemic
Right.
principle.
Do what you're going to do. Let it harm none, which
is arguable.
It's arguable.
Well, we'll get into that later.
Okay.
I think right now we should take last break for the show.
And then we're going to get into doing
more
some
technique,
and then shit you can do like today.
We would like to give a shout out to the Chaos Coven, or Church of Nothing. The Chaos Coven is a Chicago-based chaos magic working group led by Naya Ein and Ninov. They host workshops every third Saturday of the month from 3 to 5 p.m. at the Occult Bookstore in Chicago, Illinois. Considered by some to be the oldest spirit shop in the world. Each class is pay as thou wilt with a $15 suggested donation. You can find the Chaos Coven and the Occult Bookstore on Facebook or occultbookstore.com.
Alright, so coming back, we were talking about god forms and egregores and servitors and stuff, and while we were on break, we had the idea of talking about a familiar.
Yeah.
Which is
familiar,
a whole thing.
Yeah, it's a concept that's very, very old within Western practice, particularly Western witchcraft, and that it's brought up in the
basically any pop culture reference to magic that you've ever read.
Right, and it's shown up recently in the Sabrina shows and all of
Dungeons
that shit.
and Dragons.
Right.
Dungeons
and Dragons. Yeah, a familiar is an
Dresden Files.
Dresden Files, yeah.
Dresden Files is good.
An animal or a spirit, it could be a servitor, whatever, that is familiar to you, that helps you work with your magical practice. For example, this cat laying right here, I would consider my familiar. And she matches me personality-wise. Even though she's my wife's cat, my wife had this cat 2-3 years prior to even meeting me. This cat pays more attention to me than it does her.
I would say that the primary difference between a familiar and any of the other egregore, servitor, etc. that we've talked about, the primary difference is that usually, and that's
they're tangible.
Yeah, that's the big caveat. Usually they are tangible and they are physically represented.
Yeah. And cats tend to be, amongst magicians, one of the most common servitors.
Cats, rats, birds.
Yeah.
Are usually what people think about. And it's not what people think of, like, when you read a book and you're like, oh yeah, this cat popped open the book and it was on the page that I needed it to be on. No. It's more so, like, for example, your cat being here, just kind of helps you focus a little more, and it's that part of it's not necessarily tangible, but it's the cat is on the physical plane.
Yeah, and it's not only that; the cat helps a lot. Like, it's always been amongst myself and other chaos magicians that I've come in contact with. Cats, we've always said that cats know magic.
Yeah.
And we'll be doing a ritual, and we'll have the entire space set up and all of that jazz, and the cat just walks in. Like, the cat could have spent the rest of its fucking day out in another room sunning itself in the sun, but the minute we start doing magic, that's when the cat decides to appear and get in the middle of our fucking business.
Well, I remember we were doing a ritual, it would have been about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. We were doing a ritual to charge some things for your wife.
Yeah.
And as soon as we set up the pentagram, we put all the stuff on the points, and we put the 2 things that we were charging in the middle of the pentagram. Cat shows up, lays down in the middle of the pentagram. Like,
yeah.
A, that's synchronicity. B, that's a familiar.
Yeah. And it was her cat. It wasn't this one. We have 2 cats here. It was the other one who is a cuddle slut and is all up on her business all the goddamn time.
I should change my name to Frauder Cuddle Slut. That's a good name. That's just a good name.
Yeah.
That's just a good name.
That's a great one.
Well, my original one was Frauder Dad.
Yeah, but then that has some...
I don't want to be a dad.
Yeah.
Anyways.
We just wanted to bring up familiar really quickly as, it's...
Now, the difference between a familiar and a pet, I would say, in general, and pet owners will fucking battle me to the death on this.
Yep.
You find a pet, a familiar finds you.
Very true. Because, again, I consider this cat my familiar...
Not your pet.
Right. I didn't get the cat. I came in here, I came into my wife's life, all of that, and then this is the cat that shows up. This is the one.
Are you saying that you married your wife as a means to have a familiar?
Yes.
Okay.
It was worth it for the
I'm
familiar.
gonna get that one out of the
Yep.
way.
Boom.
All right. So let's move on to techniques. We've talked about all of this like high theory stuff, and then we went on this giant tangent about, oh, we're going to tell you things you can do right now. Well, motherfucker, we're doing it right now.
Okay, so the first ones we want to first technique defining things we want to cover is banishing and grounding.
I would say even before that, we should go into meditation.
Okay, fair enough.
Because when you talk about especially Western practice and Western esotericism, meditation is the building block for all of that.
No, it's the same with Eastern as well.
Meditation is the building block for inhibitory gnosis.
Yeah.
Meditation is exactly what you think it is.
Right.
You sit in a room, you stare at a wall, or you close your eyes, and you just sit.
Yeah, then that's one of the reasons why in Liber Null and Psychonaut that meditative gnosis is one of the first ones they want you to teach or the first ones that Peter Carroll wants you to learn is because it is the hardest one to master.
But it is also the most reliable once you do master it because there are the fewest outliers. For example, chemognosis.
Yeah.
It's you basically, when I think of chemognosis, I think of you're brute forcing your brain. Right? You're feeding it all these substances, but those substances have weird unintended results. You could take too much acid and suddenly you're freaking the fuck out. You don't know where you are. You could take too many, fucking Benadryl and suddenly you can't remember that you have to piss.
And frankly, I think that unless you are a practiced magician and know what you are doing and have your building blocks in yoga and meditation and things like that, chemognosis can very much be a crutch.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say this, the first gnosis that I ever consciously achieved was chemognosis. But since then I've made it a point to I very rarely use it. And the reason for that is because I don't want to become reliant on that. I don't want to, oh dude, I gotta drop fucking 6 hits of acid if I want to do magic. I don't want to do that. I don't want to have to get high to do something. That being said, if I need to do magic quick, chemognosis is the quickest way to get there. It's not the most reliable, but it's the quickest.
But it's a gnosis for the common man.
I would say if we're going, no. No. Gnosis for the common man is excitatory gnosis.
Yeah, because too many people, when taking drugs, tend to fall within the whole party concept. So it's like, all right, well, I've taken all of this. I'm not going to do magic because it's party time.
Well, not only that, but everybody has, we've talked about how everybody's experienced gnosis. 90% of those people experienced excitatory gnosis. You were at a concert and it was so fucking rad, man!
Yeah.
That's gnosis. That's the easiest one to get to. Because I'm going to go back and walk back what I said. Excitatory gnosis is the easiest because there's zero risk of going to jail for trying to do it.
Go ahead and tell that to any of the people who get into bar fights because they get excited.
Well, yeah, but they also were drinking to begin with.
Well, that's fair. That's very fair.
Going dancing for fucking ever, or,
I'll agree.
But anyways, so gnosis, meditation is really easily tied into that. And again, I would say is a building block for any kind of esoteric practice.
Yeah, so stepping stone technique.
Because
just meditation.
It's about your mind. It's about you. And there are 2 forms of meditation that a lot of people, you're going to fall into one of 2 categories for meditation.
Which you've got concentration meditation and then emptiness or inspiration or insight meditation. So with concentration meditation, it's exactly that. You're concentrating on a specific thing. So you're meditating on something that you are putting your whole mind towards. So be it you're concentrating on your breath. You're concentrating on the flame of a candle. You're concentrating on your back left elbow. You're concentrating on the mudra that you're currently sitting in. The other one would be emptiness or insight meditation. And with that, you are completely emptying everything. And in doing so, it has many, many perks. But what the purpose of it is to get rid of all thought. To sit within a motionless state and get rid of everything. To clear every thought that you have, so that way, instead of focusing on one particular thing, you're focusing entirely upon nothing.
You're passively observing everything.
Yeah, and that's the meditation I've done. Before magic and being a whole part of it was just, meditation helps you de-stress, so sit here and just empty your mind and just chant or sit there.
But not only that, by doing that, that's still concentrated.
Yeah.
You're focusing on the mantra.
On trying to be empty?
No, you're focusing on the mantra. You're focusing on sitting there and doing the thing. The most common thing I would say you see with like emptiness meditation is people trying to achieve astral projection. Because it doesn't matter what position you're in. You just get comfortable.
Yeah. It
doesn't matter what you're thinking about. You think about nothing. As a thought comes in, you accept that thought and move along. That's emptiness meditation.
And that brings us to the next definition we have, which is astral.
So I'll talk a little bit personally about this one. For about the last 6 months or so, I've been working on building an astral temple. Astral, and it gets back into, we're talking about means of manifestation, and we're talking about reality. There are many different forms of reality. There's physical reality, the things you can see, touch, hear, what is physically available to you here and now. Astral is a different plane of reality. Most commonly, it is achieved through dream states. Mm-hmm. However, there's also astral projection, which Arch Trader Blue Fluke has a really good guide on getting to astral projection.
Like step-by-step procedure?
Yes.
Cool.
It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of effort. You really have to,
But then
focus.
again, nothing in magic comes easily.
Exactly. At least nothing worth attaining.
Yeah. If you're not willing to put in the effort, what's the point?
So moving from that, I've been doing a lot of dream magic. Another way to achieve, or to get to the astral plane is through lucid dreaming.
Okay.
And it's just a way of looking at how lucid dreaming works, which everybody has this concept of what lucid dreaming is. Lucid dreaming is the idea that you are conscious and aware of the fact that you are dreaming within a dream, and from that point, you can then take control. You can then make strides and do conscious things inside that dream. Magically speaking, you have accessed the astral plane by doing that. That's been a lot of the work I've been doing in the last 6 months or so, working on building this, temple in the astral plane that I can go to when I'm lucid dreaming, or if I eventually achieve astral projection, which should tell you I've been working on that for the better part of a year. Still haven't gotten there
yet.
It's a lot of work, but you get there and you're building and you're building and you're building and you're building. That's another means of manifestation when you talk about, even going back super far into the episode, talking about it is my will to fly. You have a lucid dream where you're flying. That's achievable in the astral plane because it's a dream state. So you get into all of that kind of shit. But astral, it's a different plane of reality that is not physically observable.
So, like going back earlier back in the episode about flying, on the astral plane, I could sprout wings and just fly.
Absolutely.
Yes.
That's entirely what you can do on the astral plane. But it is not observable. It's not physical. You can't touch it. You can't provide evidence. You can't take a picture of the astral plane and show it to somebody.
Yeah, or like I can't have my buddy just, hey, you want to see something cool? And then we both go to the astral plane and I sprout wings.
That being said, you absolutely can meet people on the astral plane.
What?
Yes.
It's called dream rituals. I've done dream rituals with Yara before.
Really?
Yeah.
Yara and Dreadnought in a dream together?
On the astral plane.
There's so many titties.
Dear listeners, there are a lot of titties.
But it's a lot harder to get a grasp on because laws are not the same there.
Understandable.
It's dream state, right? We are not at all capable of transferring that information. anything that I pull out of there is purely anecdotal. For example, I can talk to Yara. I'm building this temple on the astral plane. I've been doing it for the last 6 months. I want you to come see it. We could do a dream ritual where he shows up to my temple. It will be a very different temple to him.
Yes.
I might not even be there. I might not even exist. It's so anecdotal. It's so unknown. There's no way of us to quantify that information right now. That's the astral plane. That's psychological magic. That's us not understanding what we're capable of.
It brings it all back to the psychological model.
I would say,
in a very broad sense.
I would say that the astral plane is probably the most concrete example of the psychological model that there is.
I would argue that it's the most meta model.
Fair enough.
Because therein you do have, yes, as you observe, the psychological model. But you also have energies that you are able to witness and manipulate within the astral realm. You have spirits that you are able to manipulate and speak to and converse with.
And ultimately, it's what I say it is.
Yeah.
As far as you're concerned, as far as Yara's concerned, as far as the listener is concerned, it's what I say it is. It's anecdotal evidence. There's no way to quantify it.
Right. From there, we can talk about the banishing and grounding then.
Okay, yeah, so let's start with grounding.
Is it grounding and then banishing, or banishing and then grounding?
They're two separate things.
Okay.
So let's start with grounding. Grounding is something that's not used nearly as often, but it is.
It's just I feel it's used an equal amount. It's just not as spoken about.
It's also not as consciously done.
Right. Yeah, that's the point I'm trying to get.
Yeah.
It's not really consciously done. It's not really spoken about. What grounding is just bringing yourself down to the moment now. So okay, for example, say after this recording, we decide to do a ritual, right? And we're still all super pumped and excited about the fact that we finally got an episode in the bag that is fucking worth putting up on the internet for people to listen to.
It don't suck.
Yeah. And we're all fucking super stoked about that, and we're ready to do it and ready to go. What we need to do is a banishing/grounding, and what the grounding does is takes all of that energy, all of that excitatory whatever, and brings it down. So that way, instead of all of this excitation that we're focused on, it brings it down to, okay, we'll put that aside for the moment. Instead, what we're going to do is focus on now.
So what I would say is that where banishing is about getting rid of the energy around you, it's about the outside. Grounding is about the magician. Grounding is about bringing you as a magician back to Earth.
Right, which you could argue with the occult truth, as above, so below. You can bring macrocosm versus microcosm. So,
well, it's also the idea that banishing and grounding are essentially the same thing. The difference is the what they act upon.
Right, and that's the point I was getting at, where you have banishing getting rid of things on the outside, grounding gets rid of things on the inside.
And I think what it is then at that point we're basically arguing semantics.
Yep, that's what we always do.
Yeah, that's magic. It's that and hot witches.
Hot goth witches.
Fuck yeah, dude. And 95% chugging dick.
Occultism's just about chugging dick.
Yeah, so you guys are an hour and 50 million minutes into this, and it's just chugging dick. It's okay. But,
just skip the rest of the episodes, just know it's about chugging dick. Next!
No, but realistically, so we'll go in, we can kind of move into banishing from here. If you do a ritual, let's say we've done a ritual to summon and invoke Spirit X, whatever that is to you.
Spirit X sounds like a really cool detective.
I used to play bass for Spirit X.
No, you didn't! You played bass for Rebecca.
Yeah, she likes my pickles, dude. Anyways.
Oh, dirty dumpster pickles.
Anyways, so banishing, we've done this ritual, we've invoked Spirit X, we've gotten what we needed from Spirit X. As a group, we're getting ready to end the ritual, right? The most common banishing you'll see from a ritual is banishing with laughter.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of reasons for that. If you read Liber MMM, the theory behind banishing with laughter is the fact that laughter has no polar opposite. The opposite of laughter is therefore laughter. So you banish a ritual with laughter. Now, when they talk about banishing the ritual, you're banishing the energy, you're banishing the spirit that you've summoned, that you've invoked. You're banishing that out. But at the same time, you're grounding within that ritual. So what'll happen is whoever, let's say Yara invokes Spirit X. We ask the questions we want. We get the answers we need. It's time to banish. We all start laughing. Everybody starts laughing. Yara starts laughing, but he hasn't necessarily grounded yet. Or we don't know that he's grounded yet. So what'll happen is I'll come up to him and I'll start asking questions. What is your name? Where are you? What day is it? Things like that. And what that is confirming that Yara has grounded.
And is not still Detective X.
Yeah.
Exactly. And there are procedures you can take if that doesn't happen. One of the most effective forms of grounding is the one that I use pretty much every time, is the Catholic idea of exorcism.
Yeah.
Because it holds so much fucking sway. You hear someone, like you see someone do the cross and they start going into the Lord's Prayer, that's going to bring you back real quick. Not because like, oh, it's so serious, but you're going to be like, dude, I remember The Exorcist.
Yeah.
Then you're going to think about that chick throwing pea soup everywhere. You're going to start laughing even more.
Right.
And then I'm going to ask you again, what's your name? Oh, I'm Frater Yara. Where are you at? I'm in my apartment. Like,
right. It's going to work different for different people. So say you weren't entirely grounded yet. At no point, like, when I try to bring you back to grounding, am I going to start practicing Yoruba dance methods? Because that's not going to work for you as an individual. But grounding another person and bringing them back down to reality is a very individualistic thing that you have to know.
And I think coming back to that, I would agree even more to what you were saying before about grounding and banishing. Because I know, like, I trust Yara implicitly to ground me. He trusts me implicitly to ground him. Mm-hmm. We know we can do it. We've known each other for decades now.
Yeah, so there's no worry of, like, misgrounding.
Right.
If that's a thing.
It gets it's gotten hairy a couple of times.
Is that a thing, though? Is there a way to not properly ground?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
But the problem is...
Like for example, what I had just given, if I attempted to ground you within a Yoruba dance ritual, that's not going to do anything for you.
Nope. Still being Detective X for that point.
Yeah.
And now, we've done many different rituals. Most of the rituals I've done with Yara, and this is the most I can do with it, is anecdotal stuff, because that's just how grounding is. You don't know grounding works until you know it's worked.
Yeah, until it's already past fruition.
To go back to what I've been relying on so heavily for the last 10 minutes, it's anecdotal.
Yeah.
I don't know Yara's grounded until I know Yara. So, we do a lot of goetic work, or we've done a lot of goetic work in the past.
Yeah.
So, the easiest way to get rid of goetic work is to use, Catholic exorcism. Because it's kind of, pop culturally or whatever, it's kind of like an opposite thing. You're working with demons, you're working with angels. If I had to, I could go so far as to try and evoke the spirit of an archangel to get rid of that. And that's not for me to be like, oh, look at me, I'm Michael. Like,
Mr. Magician Big Dick.
It's because I know that that's symbolism that he's going to recognize.
Yeah, and then once the recognition is actually complete.
And he being Frater Yara, not being Bune or whoever, whatever goetic, deity that we've summoned. So at that point, I can see how he reacts to it, and we can, draw a baseline from there. But how, if we were doing hoodoo, which we've done hoodoo a couple of times, and thankfully it's been very easy, but how I would ground with a hoodoo ritual is different than how I would ground with a goetic ritual.
So different grounding for different rituals?
Yeah.
Or just for models?
It's just, again, it's so occult and esoteric and so untalked about because it's implicit in the banishing.
It very much has to do with who you're with at the time, what you're working with, and how you know those people around you.
And it's just implied in the banishing. Like,
Yeah.
how I would do a grounding for, say, you, for example, would be very different than how I would ground Yara, even if we were doing the same ritual.
Yeah.
It would just be different. You just have to know
two different
that.
people, two different
Which,
grounding methods.
Thankfully for me, because, like, and we can talk about this in other episodes, we're kind of getting close to time here.
Yeah.
But, like, one of the things that I would say I'm decent at is invocation. Part of being really good with invocation is understanding just how grounding works. And because of that, it's just easy for me to tell how grounding is going to work better for certain people. But that's just, it's hard to explain. It's kind of like the definition of porn put out by the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
You just know it. Like, you know when somebody's grounded. And I think in future episodes, I feel like we could probably do a whole episode on banishing and grounding.
Yeah. Which, before we move on, banishing is, just covering this really quickly, is getting rid of outside influence.
Yes.
I don't want to spend too much time focusing on grounding, but what banishing is getting rid of outside influence. So, be it, one thing that we're going to touch on the very end of the episode is a method of banishing, which we're going to want you to perform every day until we do the next episode.
Which we're going to do at the end of the episode.
Yeah.
So,
which we'll be working on.
But what it does is it gets rid of outside influence. So every day in the morning, we'll have you fucking banish, and so what that'll do is gets rid of any outside influence. It's kind of the opposite of grounding, where you focus in on yourself, because by banishing, you are grounded. And so in banishing everything, you're getting rid of any, like, okay, I'm no longer paying attention to the fact that the gardeners are outside in my apartment complex making a shitload of noise with their trimming of my bushes. I'm not paying attention to the fact that my roommate won't shut the fuck up with his trap music. Instead, I'm going to banish all of this and focus on the now.
The point that I would make to that is, because there's banishing happening, they're not mutually exclusive. They're not intrinsically tied. Mm-hmm. I can ground him and the energy can still be there. I can banish a ritual and he could still be invoked. Right. So, the idea is you need to be able to do both. Banishing is a thing that is focused pretty much without, again, talking about all these energies. Not only I'm banishing all this bullshit that's going on in my life. I'm banishing the idea that I just can't get fucked to save my life. I'm banishing the idea that I drink too much. I'm banishing the idea that I need to clean my goddamn kitchen. You know, things like
banishing the idea of, I had a bad dream and I don't want to do that anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
So I wake up, banish.
Yeah, that's what banishing is. And we'll get into a whole banishing ritual at the end of the episode. Right now, we're going to kind of go into some other techniques here. The easiest one I think we can go into probably is visualization.
Yep. Which plays a very, very important part in any chaos magic.
Is that different from meditation?
Yes, very different.
Yes.
It's a part of meditation sometimes. It's, again, going back to the Venn diagram thing. Yeah. Everything's related, but not really.
So, with visualization, it's being able to picture things in your mind's eye. So, with meditation, you are focusing on a specific thing. Right? Be it the dance of the flame of a candle. But with visualization, you're able to picture that thing in your mind. And some people do have I wouldn't say it's a disorder, but they do have the mental incapability of visualizing things. But for most people, they are able to visualize.
I would say for me, like, it's easy, like, when I visualize things, it's usually very etheric.
Yeah.
It's not like you're going to see, like, oh my god, this is a thing that's physically right there in front of me. You're going to kind of, like, see the outline of a thing, and you're like, okay, cool, fucking awesome.
Yeah, like closing your eyes and just like, there's a candle in front of me, and I've been focusing dancing, and then you close your eyes and you visualize the candle.
Exactly. I did.
There's being able to close your eyes and visualize a sigil that you had just drawn. being able to see everything that incorporates that sigil.
Yeah, just that sigil chiseled into the darkness whenever I just close my eyes.
And it's all a concentration technique. It's all being able to focus your mind on this one thing. And that is why Gnosis is so important. Because when your mind is focused to a singularity, and then you can focus that singularity on this sigil you've just made, you're fucking golden.
Yep.
You're right there.
Moving on from visualization, even though it does play a very important part, and we will describe this in the banishing at the end of the episode.
Yeah, we'll touch back with base.
It's such a simple doesn't mean easy, but there's just not much to say about it. It's visualization.
Right.
Yes.
We're gonna chug through the last 5 or so of these definitions. The first one is flux or flow. And with flux and flow, what that basically is as we discussed with the big will, the flux and flow is how you incorporate your magical practice with how the universe is moving towards your capital W.
I would add on to that by saying that flux and flow is not something that you are going to be able to control for a long, long, long time. And I would even say, I'd go so far as to say, when you can control flux and flow, you are this close. And you can't see how it's not very far.
No.
It's close.
When you can control that, you are on it. Like, you've been doing this for 20 years, Yara?
Mm-hmm.
How many times have you been able to control your flux and flow?
I'd say about 5 to 10% of the time.
Exactly. I've been doing this for 6 years. I can say twice.
I've been doing it for 6 minutes. 0%, listeners.
It's just...
Boom! Got it. Love it.
Nailed it. But it's flux and flow is this very etheric kind of concept of what you want to do with flux and flow. It's not so much trying to control it. It's trying to recognize it. And that comes into recognizing synchronicities. When you can recognize that you're in flux, like, just ride it. Just go with it. Don't necessarily try to change something to make it happen. Just understand that flux and flow is going to happen. When you're riding high and like, everything I do is magic, I'm going to do magic forever, I'm going to be the next Aleister Crowley. That's going to come
get off your goddamn high horse.
But you're going
to pump the fucking brakes, kiddo.
But understand that you're going to come down from that eventually, and 3 to 6 months from now, you will not see magic in anything.
Yeah.
Ever. You're going to be like, magic is fucking pointless. I'm doing this for no reason. I'm going to stop doing it. I'm not touching my tarot cards anymore. I have these bones. Why? If my landlord sees them, I'm fucked. Like, you just have to understand that everything moves in these cycles.
Kind of like an ocean current.
Exactly.
Yes, very much so. There is a tide.
Exactly. And it's not about controlling that at first. And for the first, I would say, at least decade of you doing chaos magic or magic in general, it's about recognizing it. Mm. And when you can recognize it, you're on the path.
Right. Next, I want to talk about Tantra and what Tantra is.
Tantra is such as a preface, Tantra is a very tough thing to get a hold of. Because first of all, as a new practitioner, you're going to think, oh, fucking the Tantra, different kinds of sex.
Tantra.
Yeah, that's one thing that comes across a lot within the Western culture is you hear Tantra, you think tantric sex, you think...
Which we can talk about. We don't have the time right now.
Yeah, we'll talk about it in the future. Very much.
I honestly, again, we could do a whole episode on Tantra. Like, Jesus fuck, we could do a whole episode on Tantra.
Right. But what Tantra is, and there's no definite definition. There's no consensus upon a definition. But what Tantra is at least in my own definition, is the rituals, practice, and enacting of Eastern magical beliefs, be it through yoga, be it through following Zazen, be it through looking at practicing chakras, be it through Chakti. All of these different things come together. Yes. And that's one
So
thing that
West meets East?
This is something that we don't see eye to eye on at all.
Okay.
So what Yara's going to say, which go by all means, I don't mean to interrupt.
No, you're fine. But it's the concept of, at least as far as I see it, Tantra is bringing through ritual practice those things that are taught through the Vedic texts, together with like Shakti, yoga, all of the like everything within primarily Buddhist and Hindu culture into a kind of fruition.
And how would you describe it, Dreadnought?
The way I describe it is something that I know Yara hates the way I describe it.
But I can't wait.
The way that I describe Tantra is doing shit for the sake of doing shit.
Yeah, that's no.
Tantra, when you think about Tantra, like, you take the descriptions, like, you take the most narrow definition of what Tantra is, which is the practice of the sacred Sanskrit texts. What does that mean? You're doing it to do it. And I'm not saying, I would even argue that the way I'm saying it is more important than that. It's about learning ritual. It's about learning doing things. And we could even extend that to when people, fucking tantric sex, right? What is tantric sex? Tantric sex is putting your dick in something for the sake of putting your dick in something. It's not for coming. It's not for orgasm.
No.
It's literally, you're doing it to do it, and you're doing it as an endurance exercise. That's what Tantra in general is.
Like Om Shinrikyo.
Exactly. Like,
it had to be brought up once.
No, like legit though. Like that whole like fucked up Om Shinrikyo sex ritual, which look into that, because holy fuck, that's insane. It's insane. But
if you can find any person of the opposite sex who's willing to do that with you, by fuck. Anyways, the point being, to me, what Tantra is, it's the art of rote memorization. It's the art of understanding why the practices, why the going through the motions is important. And I'm not saying that to belittle Tantra, and I'm not saying that to belittle that idea. But you need to do it in order to understand that you don't need to do it. It's the same thing that I was talking about with Sigils, right? Right.
Like, I only understood that you don't need Gnosis to do Sigils from 5 years of thinking that you have to go into Gnosis to be able to do a Sigil. Right?
It's all about practice.
Yeah,
you have to, through practice, you have to learn what works.
Exactly. And what Tantra is to me is the art of practice. You have to do these things to understand why you don't need them. You have to, think about it even like, I would argue that Tantra it shows itself in even like Christianity that 70% of America practices, right?
Yeah.
You have to pray before your meal every day for 10 years to understand why you're not praying for your meal every day.
Yeah.
Like, to truly
That's
understand. To truly understand.
Yeah.
I would say that probably most people are going to disagree with me on that.
No, that's fine. Like, I'll say so much as now that you've been able to articulate your definition, I'm not as much opposed to it.
Yeah,
Did
it's
you
not
hear that, listeners? They're actually agreeing with one another.
It's not that it's stupid, but it's stupid.
Hella stupid.
Anyway, so we've got a couple things left to knock out here.
Yep, and one is the Idealon, which Idealon it stems back to Plato's allegory of the cave, in which there is, you have our reality, and then there also exists a perfect shadow of that thing represented in the ether. So you have yourself, your Idealon would be your holy guardian angel. You have a table, and from that table you have an abstract shadow of what the perfect definition of a table is.
So an idealon is what something represents, not what it does.
Right. And not actually what it is. You can argue, yes, this is a table, but is it a perfect table?
Is the table.
Right. Because you could say that what's sitting in front of us, no, it's not a perfect table because it has drawers. Tables don't usually have drawers. A table is like 4 points and has this and whatever. That's not a perfect representation of what a table is. And the idealon would be the perfect representation.
And I would say the again, because I have a very pop culture oriented brain, right? If you think about the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie, right?
Yep.
Let's just go there. We're just gonna go there, right?
And how 2 Chainz was sitting there, standing at the fucking bow, just screaming into the ocean.
You goddamn right,
Oh,
homie.
I fucking hate you.
But no, there's the scene. There's 2 scenes, right? We're just gonna go.
There are
with
2
it.
scenes in the whole
Chainz.
movie.
Number 1, 2 scenes that matter. There are 2 scenes that matter.
One with
now.
2 Chainz.
Both
One
with 2
with
Chainz.
Orlando Bloom.
Both with 2 Chainz. But there's the scene where he's talking about what a man can't do and what a man can't. Right?
Yeah.
Where he's like, oh, I could let you drown, but I can't get this ship into whatever, blah, 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 whatever. Like, you're talking about, like, this is what this thing is, but this is what it should be, right?
Right.
And then the second part is he's like, that's what a ship does, this is what a ship is. That, I think, is a really easy parallel to draw. But what a ship does is it sails you around and blah, 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 whatever. But what a ship is, he's like, oh, but what a ship is it's freedom. I can't do a good Jack Sparrow.
It's close. I'm appreciating it regardless.
What a ship.
But then again, I've been drinking a little bit, so.
Oh, what a ship does, what a ship is freedom.
Oh my god,
You
I'm
can
a
sail
little
the
hard.
7 seas, huh? But you can't sail my heart.
Anyways, the point being,
Ugh.
that's what an idealon is, right?
Yeah.
An idealon to you is the perfect, it's what the thing is versus what the low thing does.
So a holy guardian angel for object.
What
Kind of, yeah.
What a holy guardian angel is versus what a holy guardian angel does. For me, what a holy guardian angel does is provide me with insight and provide me with this thing that I should be
there's the
striving
path
for.
that we should be walking towards.
What a holy guardian angel is, again, now, to me, in this moment, is a goal. That's an idealon.
Yeah, the end of the road where you just see the 2 golden arches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
McDonald's.
Alright, and then the last definition we have is pragmatism, which is all chaos magic is about.
100%.
Pragmatism. Does it work for you? If it doesn't work for you, then it doesn't fucking matter. Don't do it.
To wit, this episode. If you've just listened to 2.5 hours of us just being fucking idiots, and it doesn't work for you, then stop.
Yeah.
I hope you don't. I hope you come back for the next episode.
Right,
but-
and that's another thing. At the end of this episode, like, any of our definitions could have been totally disagreeable to you as a practitioner, but you know what? We've given the definitions as best we can as according to what we practice.
And we hope you, get a hold of us. Legitimately, get a hold of us and let us know what what works for you. What doesn't work for you. Take stuff from this episode. If something from this episode worked for you, awesome. If it didn't work for you, then cool. We can try and help, or we can try and amend things. But that's what this
Let
whole
us know. Let us know what we can fix.
Yeah, this whole show is about being available as a tool to use right now.
And, it also comes down to the amount of experience. We can all be reached out individually. From, Yara, who's been practicing this for a very long time. Dreadnought, who's been practicing it for a fair amount of time. And me. I don't have a cool name yet, but I have been practicing long enough.
Seriously, how have you been doing this for 3 months? You don't have a name yet.
You fucking chump.
I'm waiting.
What is
for
this,
the
fucking
perfect time.
amateur hour?
Oh, yeah, it is.
We're going to do a ritual later. We're going to get you a name. Anyways, speaking of things you can do right now,
Yep.
let's talk about a banishing ritual. This is a banishing that you can do right now. I would say banishing, to me, is the thing you need first in your bag before you're doing anything else.
So out of my entire toolkit, banishing the hammer.
You need to have a banishing before you have a sigil. You need to have banishing before you can master the art of meditation. You need to have a banishing ritual first. And we're going to talk about the easiest banishing ritual that is widely accepted. You can do anywhere. It takes 10 fucking seconds.
Yep.
And it's called the EAO banishing.
Yep.
EAO?
EAO. Now, if you are writing it out, it's going to be an I-A-O, but it's pronounced E-A-O. And the way it works, it's 3 steps, super easy. The way that it works is you're going to start with the E position, which is hands together, straight up in the air. And while you're doing that...
Like you have your hands together like praying or whatnot, just like pressed against each other.
Straight up in the air, palm to palm. You're going to visualize a white pillar.
Yep.
Shooting from top to bottom through you. And while you do that, in a high-pitched voice...
You take a full breath of air.
Yep, full breath of air. In a high-pitched voice, you're going to put an E sound out.
High-pitched E. Usually falsetto.
Yep, so you're going to do your breath in, breath out, just to get ready. And then you do the high-pitched E, hands above you. Here we go.
And as you have that full breath of air, you slowly expel the full breath of air as we just did.
Exactly.
And you'll do that with each next step.
Now, the next step is going to be the A, which, for the purposes of the ritual, will be pronounced as Ah.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to do your hands outstretched.
Yep. Like a cross. Like being crucified.
Jesus.
Like Jesus.
And in that moment, you're going to visualize a red pillar of light shooting through you horizontally along your arms.
So that this way, now you have a white beam of light and a red beam of light forming a cross across your entire body.
And then again, full breath in, and you're going to do a middle-pitched ah, coming again all the way out, that breath all the way out. So ready? Alright, so that's the second step. The third step, you're going to go into the universal mudra, which is going to be your hands clasped, 4 fingers together, thumbs clasping, at your root chakra, your dick or balls or
your
pussy
taint
or whatever. That's going to be there. You're going to imagine a blue light visualization. Here we go. You're going to visualize a blue light emanating from the center of that universal mudra, emanating out.
Yep.
And that's going to be a low-pitched O sound. So you've got the white pillar shooting from top to bottom, the red pillar shooting horizontally across, and now you've got the blue light shooting out from you. So it's going to be a full breath in, and then a low-pitched, as low as you can, until that breath is out. So here we go. And that's the EAO banishing. That's, again, I would say probably the most simple universal banishing ritual that there is.
I mean, it was so simple, we literally just did it.
Yeah, exactly.
We literally just did it sitting down.
That's how it works. It's a great banishing ritual.
And so what we're going to ask of you, Dylan, is every day until we record our next episode, do that.
Okay.
First thing in the morning.
And there's something else you guys want me to work on, sigils?
I'm going to challenge you on this. I want you to do a sigil every day. I don't care what it's for. Do a sigil every day and record the results for that sigil.
So are we doing this as you guys challenge me, or both as individuals, you both have me something to do?
Doesn't matter.
We can do either way.
I like the idea.
We'll
both of you are just like, all right, you should try this.
I'm gonna challenge you to do a sigil every day.
So we have sigils from Dreadnought and banishing from Yara.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what that sigil is, but do it every day and record the results of that sigil.
Same with the banishing. I bought a notepad from Dollar General for $2.
Exactly.
And that's what I'm recording on.
All right, that's it. That's the first episode. Faith Blind Council podcast in the bag.
Fuck yeah!
We're going to be back next month. You can also check on our website. We're going to have some stuff going up there for updates as far as things you can do. We'll have some show notes. We'll have some...
so that you don't have to listen to this whole fucking thing to figure out a definition.
Exactly. We'll have that up. We'll also have steps for the EAO banishing ritual up there. There's going to be a lot of stuff going on. as far as just like mid-month updates, things like that. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I'd like to thank our sponsors again. We have
2 Chainz. And next month we got Adidas.
But I'd like to thank our sponsors again. We have not only the Occult Bookstore in Chicago, Illinois. Fucking awesome ass store, dude. They got so much shit in there. It's dope. But we also have welcome to TarotDice.com. Super dope place to go. I bought stuff from there. I got my Athame from there. I got a divination set from there.
I got a really nice sacrificial dagger from there as well.
Fuck yeah, you can get a lot of dope shit from there.
Really cool stuff.
Check that shit out. We're gonna get out of here. We will see you next month. Thank you so much. Also, before I forget, fucking Babylon.
Yes.
Babylon's coming up. We might...
Babylon Rising, that's taking place in June, I believe.
Yes, it's taking place in June in Southern Indiana. You can get your tickets for that still. I believe they are still $60.
Something like that. I don't remember.
Either way,
it's $93 at the door. I think it might be $60, $65 pre-order.
Absolutely.
And you can join, like, a Facebook page for them as well.
You can get a hold of, if you go to, I think it's just Babylon.
Just BabylonRising.com.
BabylonRising.com. Check out for getting your tickets and all that good stuff. It's at the Thelemic Festival. Super cool.
Thelemic Festival, so basically as long as you stick with the tenets of Thelema, which is do as thou wilt shall be the whole of the law, love under will, love under law. As long as you stick to that, you're welcome.
We are all going to be there. There might be a live episode. I don't really know.
Maybe not.
But for sure, we're all going to be there. I also know that representatives from the Occult Bookstore are going to be there. And I also know that welcome to TarotDice.com is going to have a fucking booth there.
Yes.
So you can buy shit from them there. It's going to be awesome. Or you can just hang out and talk.
You can buy signed autographs from me.
Whatever.
You know, I'm a famous person.
But we will all be there. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. We will be back next month with another episode. And we're going to get the fuck out of here right now.
Fuck yeah.
Stay magical.
Stay magical.
That's the dumbest thing. We're not going to stick with that.
No, we're
yeah,
not
we
going to
are.
stick with that.